Planning East Committee meeting for planning in the East Sorry, I hesitate. I'm getting a message. Okay, no, we're fine. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to planning here at the Council Chamber in Shepton Mallet. And welcome to the members of the Planning Committee who are with us today, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that may be recorded, even if they're not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concerns, please let us know now. Okay, members who have brought their own devices with them should ensure their cameras are switched off and, very importantly, their device microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council's sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they're invited to speak by the chair. It's not permitted for any member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any members of the Planning Committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch my attention or my Vice Chair, the legal advisors or lead officers. When members in the chamber speak, please remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent. End of the formal announcements. So now I'll move on to the committee itself. My name is Ros Wyke, I'm the Vice Chair. And this afternoon I will be taking the meeting as unfortunately the chair has had to send his apologies. I will ask if there are any other apologies from the officer.
Yes, there are apologies from councillors Adam Boyden and Helen Kay, in addition to councillor Nick Cottle, who's unwell. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right, the first thing I need to do is get a acting vice chair for this meeting, and I would like to call upon Rob Reed. Anyone prepared to second that? Great, thank you very much indeed. Right, are you happy to do so? Good. Okay, great. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda. I'll just wait for Rob to settle. Okay. Right, this afternoon we have unusually but delighted to see some public questions, and I will take
minutes first, actually, Chair.
Oh, my apologies. As you can see, this is my first meeting of fully running this, so my apologies. Right, minutes of the previous meeting, page 13 of the agenda. These have been prior circulated, but in addition, do any members of the committee have any comments? No. Could I then, if people are content with the minutes, have a proposer and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lovell, and seconded by Councillor Robbins. Thank you very much indeed. We'll then move now on to public question time, and this afternoon
it is declarations of interest next. Sorry, and then it's public question time.
Oh, okay. My apologies. In addition to the registered interest, which all councillors make and they're available online, we asked for any declarations in respect to items included in the agenda this afternoon. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No? Okay, thank you for that. Right, we'll get to my public question time. And this afternoon we have two questions. The first one from Mr. Don Taylor. Do you want to come and join us? Right.
Thank you, Chair.
You have 3 minutes and I'll ask
I'll try. I have to be brief. Yes, my name is Don Taylor. I'm representing the affected community in relation to the recent approval given by the Planning Department with respect to a two-house new development in Jubilee Road. The number of affected households is roughly 17. Three areas I'm going to cover: the procedures and then the two areas where the community have been badly affected. In relation to procedural levels and our relationship with the Planning Department, the community could not be more disappointed in the lack of engagement by the planning officials. We feel we're an irrelevance. Everything we've written to them has just been bypassed or ignored. And at a procedural level, there are a number of things. We weren't invited at the parish council level to speak, right through to the requests, including from Councillor Carswell, for the decision to be made by the democratically elected officials rather than behind closed doors. We feel that the whole thing has been a done deal from the very beginning. But in procedural terms, the Planning Department has failed to follow proper procedure, and for that reason we're moving to apply for a judicial review. In terms of our concerns, I don't think we could have been more reasonable. We've followed planning legislation and regulation. In the first instance, we dealt with, in principle, overall economic cost, social benefit, amenity analysis in relation to the NCCP, the National Planning Policy Framework. This was rejected by the planning officer unilaterally, Ms. Elstrop, who refused to engage. But what we demonstrated is that there's an economic social cost benefit loss to the community of 2.26 times, £226,000 has been lost, yes, compared to 100,000 gain. We also tried to contribute constructively in terms of the design aspects of the proposal. They've been completely ignored. 7 categories we covered. Not one of them has been dealt with. Yes. So yes, thank you. So moving on to the questions. In the first instance, for question 1, why did Mr. Cottle and Ms. Blom Cooper, who signed off on the decision, opt to disregard community and fellow councillor concerns and bypass the democratic and transparent decision-making process as requested?
Mr. Taylor, you've had your 3 minutes now. Do you want to wind up?
I'll just read out your second question.
And the second question is, we believe the community provided sufficient evidence to demonstrate the substantively net adverse impacts upon the affected community from an economic, social and environmental perspective per regulatory requirement. Where is the evidence from the council that the proposal be approved utilising the same regulatory criteria? That's the key question.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Taylor. We have a response from you, from Simon Trafford, our lead officer.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So the response to the two questions that Mr. Taylor has just read out, and it's provided on behalf of the Head of Planning, and I'm reading it out on her behalf. The Head of Planning is satisfied that the planning application submitted under LPA case reference 2025 0078/4 at the property referred to as 28 Jubilee Road was properly assessed and determined against national and adopted policy and in accordance with the correct procedural requirements as set out in the Council's constitution. The report took into account all of the comments received in respect of material planning considerations. It follows, therefore, that there are no grounds to consider seeking to revoke the planning permission, which was issued on the 9th of July 2025, and also in light of the proposed application for judicial review, no further comments will be made at this stage.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Taylor, for joining us today. You will get a written copy of that response. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the second public question this afternoon. I think this is being asked on behalf of Michael Gay. Is Zani McLeod? Welcome. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm reading this on behalf of my colleague on Wanstead Parish Council, Michael Gay. Thank you very much for accepting my question. I'm a councillor on Wanstead Parish Council who have written to the Head of Planning, Alison Blom-Cooper, about an application 2024-1931 FUL, repowering of an existing operating wind turbine with a much larger one at Landmark Farm, Wanstead. Our view is that alongside the parish, the landscape officer, the MOD, and many others objected to this application before the determination due date in February. Since then, there have been only further objections, e.g. CPRE and Historic England. The case for refusal appears overwhelming. We understand the officer has been waiting for a change in the MOD objection, but 6 months have gone by without change in their position. And as noted, the MOD are not the only important objectors. Somerset Council's advice is that planning have declared themselves in crisis and that new applications will be dealt with ahead of older ones. If this is an attempt to reduce the average days applications are taking, surely deciding this application promptly on evidence submitted before the determination date would aid that cause. Our residents are being left in limbo by this planning blight that would have a serious effect on their life. This is surely unfair. I understand that this concern is one of very many, and the Parish Council have been careful not to bother the planning officer, but you will acknowledge all parties have to respect and serve the reasonable interests of our residents. Accordingly, may I be assured by the Head of Planning that Wanstead Parish Council will receive a detailed reply this week to their inquiry, that there will be no further delay in determining this very overdue application, and certainly not waiting in a queue behind more recent applications. This would surely be in the interests of all parties, including the applicants. Thank you for your consideration. Yours sincerely, Michael Gay.
Thank you. Again, can I call upon the lead officer to respond on this, please?
Thank you, Vice Chair. So again, reading on behalf of the Head of Planning who has provided this response. In accordance with paragraph 39 of the National Planning Policy Framework, the Council has worked in a positive and creative way, and we continue to maintain an open and constructive dialogue with the applicants regarding this application. Following pre-application discussions with the local planning authority, both the applicants and the planning officer have worked collaboratively to address the concerns raised. Most recently, the applicant's agent has contacted the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Department for Energy and Net Zero to express concerns about the Ministry of Defence's comments and their ongoing reluctance to engage constructively with the applicant to resolve these issues. Given that this matter is now under investigation by relevant government departments, the Council is awaiting the outcome in order to progress the application.
Yes, certainly, and just one, and then we need to put it to place.
In that communication. We did ask the question because the original question, because we don't believe there has been any independent evidence nor any submission on the website for scrutiny by our residents, by the public, since the MOD's objection 6 months ago that they were going to rescind. And this letter has been submitted to the Secretary of State somewhat suddenly since our recent inquiries landed with the Council in mid-July. Does the Head of Planning agree this letter is not really proper evidence, nor cause for any further delay either? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Right. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is item 5. And I would like to call upon the officer, I think it's Ross, yeah, to present the case in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved except for access for the erection of up to 40 dwellings, including public open space and landscaping, as you would expect. We'll come to the location of the site in a minute in the plans in the slides. So just to let you know that the recommendation has been slightly updated from the version that's in your packs. There's the full list of the Section 106 obligations that we would be seeking, that officers recommend on the slide, which includes affordable housing, health, both for the hospital and the local surgery, significant education contributions, biodiversity net gain, which will need to be secured by Section 106 because there's a significant on-site gains proposed, phosphate mitigation, delivery of an off-site footpath, management of the sustainable urban drainage system, whatever form that ends up being provided in, open space and play delivery contributions, including ongoing management. And then this is the change. So travel planning in the report, we weren't sure at that point whether or not we would be controlling the travel plan by obligation or by condition, but the form of the travel plan that we have had submitted to us is such that we want to control that through obligation. And then lastly, relevant monitoring fees. So there's a full package of infrastructure contributions proposed alongside the development. The application site is just to the north of the development limit in Evercreech. As this photo shows, it's no further north than other built elements of the village. So the form of the development wraps around the application site. So it is outside but adjoining the development limit. To the direct north of the site is agricultural land. The site itself comprises 2 fields. The spotty dog shape outlined in red is the land that's proposed for the development. The site slopes gently away from the road. And the application is submitted in outline, but with access only to be approved. But in order to be able to assess matters around drainage and access and landscaping, biodiversity net gain and so on, we have an illustrative layout that's been submitted, which shows that you can fit 40 homes, including 30% affordable homes on site alongside supporting infrastructure. As was noted in the officer's report and in the recommendation, the development of the site will require the delivery of a footpath on the northern side of Priestley Road. These screenshots from Google Street View show the existing site access and the footpath that's in place on the southern side of the road. So we just go for a gentle stroll. And the inclusion of the footpath within the planning permission means that there is a pavement the whole way for residents of the new development to be able to walk children to school. So that's the key goal for that one. And we do have a plan on the file that shows how that would be achieved. It's very difficult to read here, but it is on the application file. It is an initial design. It has been subject to initial road safety audit. It will continue to be subject to negotiation with the Highways Authority, including through various agreements to enable the works to take place. I wanted to show the relationship of the site to the wider Evercreech village. So hopefully you can see there are two concentric circles on the plan, each of which is a 200-metre radius from the site. So the first one takes you to a bus stop and the second one takes you to what's shown as the village centre. So the surgery, the village facilities are all well within standard acceptable walking distances. I'm aware that members have been sent images of surface water flooding that happens near the site at the moment. Members will be aware that we can't ask applicants to solve pre-existing problems at a site, but I do want to highlight the proposed drainage strategy for the site. So I've put the illustrative layout back up so you can see what is proposed. This isn't the settled design for the site, but it shows one acceptable way that the solution could be achieved. And as you can see, hopefully in the southwest corner of the site, there's a proposed drainage pond. That would be used to store surface water alongside crated storage under private carriageway elements within the site. And there would also be swales and rain gardens throughout the site. So surface water runoff would be restricted to greenfield runoff rates at the most and likely lower than that. So this is all shown on the submitted engineering drawing, but hopefully you can see the crated storage areas, these turquoise areas here and here. So there are crated storage areas in the private drives and the suds pond as well. And I think there's a rain gardens and swales throughout the site as well. So even if the final layout differs from this, these are the principles that we would expect to be followed across the site for any scheme. And water from across the site would be collected and then conveyed under gravity down to that southwest corner of the site into the wider drainage network. The drainage system has been designed with a climate change allowance of 45% to ensure that the site's drainage capacity can cope with future weather events. So with the conditions and obligations that are proposed, officers are confident that surface water drainage at the site can be satisfactorily managed. Finally, I just wanted to provide you with some photographs of the site in case you're not familiar with it. So these are just three simple photos of the site moving from north to east to south through the site. So we have photo one, looking straight through the site access at present, and then looking towards the property to the south. So as a reminder, the recommendation is that the application be approved as a departure to the development plan, subject to conditions and obligations to secure all of the matters listed here, including travel planning, as noted above. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ros. We have a number of public speakers, first of all. The first one I have on the list is David Julian, who is a representative of CPRE.
Good afternoon, committee. Policy issues. The site is in open countryside, outside the settlement limits, where development is strictly controlled. Principal objective of the local plan is to protect open countryside from urbanising development. If this site were developed, the approach to the village and its rural character would be irreversibly harmed. The site is not in the adopted local plan or its revision. With 163 housing completions against a target of 70, the village has significantly over-delivered on its housing commitment. The application also contravenes many paragraphs of the revised NPPF, including Para 119. Planning policies and decisions should make as much use as possible of previously developed or brownfield land. The Green Core brownfield site is preferable and is allocated in the local plan for mixed development. Para 120B. Planning decisions should recognise that undeveloped land performs many functions for wildlife, recreation, flood risk mitigation, cooling, shading, carbon storage, or food production. Para 174B. Even countryside which has no specific policy protection has intrinsic worth in the planning balance. This greenfield has value in both agricultural and ecological terms. Sustainable development. The applicant acknowledges that this is a departure from the Council's development plan, but states that the Council does not have a 5-year land supply and that presumption should be in favour of sustainable development. Sustainable development is assessed on 3 key measures. Number 1, the environmental case. This is development of a green field resulting in the loss of agricultural land and the loss of valuable habitat, its intrusion into open countryside. The economic case. There is no site-specific justification for economic growth. Jobs created by the construction phase will be temporary and will be likely to be taken by existing tradesmen. Local job opportunities are scarce. And thirdly, the social case. This is generally underpinned by the use and support of local services and facilities, but these in the main lie further afield. The large increase in vehicular movements will be broadly unacceptable. This is not sustainable development. Additional points. There are 30 public comments on the portal. 28 are objections, the other 2 are neutral. Additional concerns include potential threats to the adjacent pig farm business, flooding, and this has also been noted by Highways, distance to facilities, school and other services are at capacity. And finally, this sets a precedent for further development in the countryside. We recommend that the application be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, and well timed. Thank you, Mr. Julian. Right, we'll now move on to the second speaker, Paul Davis, who I believe is a local resident. Welcome.
Yeah, Paul Davis, a local resident at 8 Bridge Close. Committee, this site has been subject to numerous unsuccessful attempts at development, with odour and amenity issues emanating from Water Lane Pig Farm proving a significant factor. Actually led to refusal for residential land adjacent at the Grove in January 24. In objection to this present application, local residents in Pat Wiltshire, the pig farmer, commissioned a report from Salmon Planning Company. This details how the plans conflict with NPPF in respect to the pig farm and how local plan DP7 should lead to the plan's dismissal. The owner of the pig farm, Pat Wiltshire, is present with us today. He attests that this development could place restrictions and irrevocably jeopardise the continued effectiveness and management of a farm which has been established there for 60 years. A working farm maintained to red tractor standards capable of holding 600 pigs. Odours and fly nuisance will be a factor detrimental to houses of such close proximity. Conflict with new residents over such nuisance appears inevitable. The Rubik's odour assessment seems to have caused the Environmental Protection Officer to reconsider his previous report and conclude all is now satisfactory, no concerns have been expressed. But no pigs were there at the time of the assessment. The farm is regularly dormant, pigs are reared, fattened and taken away for slaughter. Whilst dormant, it is well maintained and Pat fully intends it will remain a working pig farm. The assessment must therefore be seen as flawed. And to refuse this application due to unacceptable amenity conflict and likely impact on existing farm business, as originally recommended in the EPO's report lent to September 24, is and should remain valid. I would also add that the planning officer's mitigating strategies to overcome complaints by putting in place landscaping, boundaries and upgrades to restart agricultural activities are not compatible with NPPF paragraph 194 or DP8. Pig odours are notoriously difficult to manage and control, subject to unpredictable factors such as seasonal changes in weather and wind. If the application is allowed, a disproportionate number of houses will be built in the village, nearly 3 times the local plan projections until 2029. Target was 70, but with 165 already completed, combined with 40, it was now projected at 205. This is before the agreed in principle development of the Green Core factory site was 100 plus houses are projected is factored in. This unique brownfield site needs to be prioritised. Why are we being forced to take more? Overall, the tilted balance just doesn't weigh up and just doesn't take into consideration the cumulative impact of Green Core and the overstretched infrastructure of the village, or the need to protect a valuable food resource, a working farm, which remains a valuable enterprise. Strength of public opinion in the village against this build is very strong. This development offers a foothold only to open countryside outside the village settlement for further expansion, speculation and exploitation, which will ruin this, our wonderful village, forever.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Davies. We now move on to the first speaker this afternoon, Robin O'Connor, again, a local resident, I believe. Welcome.
I'm Robin O'Connor. I'm a neighbour of the actual proposed planning area as well. So I'm on the one on the south of the actual area. It's not right. So I've got 3 main objections and 2 conditions I'd like to potentially add if it does go ahead. The first one would be the surface water drainage down Presley Road, which gets overwhelmed during heavy rainfall. The suds themselves could potentially become overwhelmed with the vast amount of water that's actually coming down and draining from the hillside. And to give you a rough idea, we have a 600mm pipe that is basically at 90% capacity for a good couple of hours. So it's huge amounts of water that comes down from that area. And it's not really clear that from the planning permission side of it, that the SUDS would be able to deal with that, given that the surface water drainage down the actual road becomes overwhelmed, and so any drainage from those SUDS would be nullified. They wouldn't be able to do it. We don't know as well if there would be any negative effects with the redesigning of the road due to the pavements, and if that is reduced and it's flooded, people won't realise that, and that will cause potential traffic accidents as well. The second issue is around with the Green Core planning application 2022. It was rejected partly based on housing density and around the surrounding area. It didn't match the density of the housing that was around there. It's the same for this one as well. However, with this area, it's in a much more sensitive part of the actual village, which is on the outside of the village in an entrance area. And so we feel that if the planning inspectorate is saying that only 2-3 years ago, it's still valid now and even more valid in this area than it would be in the Green Core, which is a brownfield site. The third objection is based on the funding of schools and GPs as well. Especially with the GP funding, it's probably not enough to really cover not only the shortfalls in both the education and GP element, but also the additional residents as well. So it's not clear if the funding that is being proposed would actually resolve the shortfall and the additional residents as well. So that's the objections. With regards to the actual conditions, given that we are neighbours to the actual planning property and the vast number of houses that potentially could be on the border to us, we would ask that would there be a consideration for the lack of privacy of elevated viewing points, and so could we have a barrier between us and the actual planning area so that we can maintain our privacy, because it would be virtually impossible for us to be able to do that given the vast area that they would potentially have, be able to view the entire garden. And also, and it was interesting that they said they couldn't actually deal with the drainage, surface water drainage of the road itself, because that's the main issue from this area is, could we potentially have a condition that would allow for our drainage, because we're one of the reasons why the flooding occurs, to be upgraded in that road as part of this as a condition, because otherwise you're not really solving the main issue of that area, which is the flooding because the surface water can't drain, and you're just building on top of that and making the situation worse. So that's the main conditions that we would like. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. We now move on to the fourth speaker, Cliff Banbury. Yep. And again, welcome to another local resident.
Good afternoon. I come for the simple reason I wish to object most strongly to the planning application that has been put forward. I totally agree with the previous speaker regarding the flood that runs down into Presley Road. Having lived there for the past 40 years, it needs to be something be sorted out, and it's not going to be sorted out with what's been proposed here, not by a long way. Also, serious thought needs to be given to the position of a foul tank and pump, which could possibly be detriment to neighbouring properties with noise, pollution and odour. And I also reiterate the position of the retention tank, as possible flooding could occur with this. An inspector's refusal for one eco-friendly house, which was outside the development line in Presley Road, would result in urban encroachment with harmful impact on the rural character of the area. This is what he said when we applied to build. Now it seems that the development line can be moved willy-nilly wherever you feel like putting it, to put in 40 dwellings with no effect. Is this the start of extending the village boundary line so the next application goes in and it eventually goes all the way up Presley Road? I can't see it being stopped unless this is stopped first. The infrastructure will have to be put in place to accommodate this development, i.e. the school, the doctor's surgery and roads with an increase in traffic flow. The village square parking is terrible at the moment and is already heavily congested. With more vehicles from the proposed site, this will make the situation more dangerous and hazardous. People will almost certainly drive down to the shops rather than walk, as is the nature of everybody. Other thing is Greencore. There is a derelict brownfield site in the village, namely the defunct factory, which is now a disgrace, dangerous, with children climbing over the wall to use as a playground. There have also been numerous fires on this site. This has been an eyesore since the close of the factory. The site is an embarrassment to the village and gives a bad impression to new buyers, of which I have knowledge of. There is no justification to develop a greenfield site outside the developments of the village. It would fail to utilise and maximise the use of a previously developed brownfield site already earmarked for development. Indeed, this application would totally harm the character and appearance of Evercreech and encourage urban sprawl. It has already been suggested that the Greencore site must be prioritised. It's got to be. Greencore has clear potential for a large housing development, especially as a housing inspector did not object in principle to the overall number of houses, 100 plus. I strongly ask the council to turn down this application once and for all and put it to bed so it doesn't really appear again. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Banbury. We now move on to Carol Priest. I believe representing, again, a local resident.
Good afternoon. I am Carol Priest. I've lived on the B3081 for 46 years, so feel qualified to object to a development on Presley Road, knowing its problems. Some years ago, Highways arbitrarily reduced the width of the only footway on the road outside our home, close to the Bell Inn, the cemetery and a popular dog walking field, so always busy. This to increase the width of the road, now 4.8 metres wide. I assure you that 2 tractors or 2 lorries cannot pass, mounting the footway instead colliding with the wall opposite. This footway is now too narrow for forcing walkers, prams, buggies and wheelchairs into the road. Speeding is hideous and we have bends either side. Narrowing the straightest stretch of Presley Road to 5.5 metres will be unlikely to stop speeding. Facilitating this development wrong in so many ways, conflicting with the NPPF in so many ways, an updated footway plan was produced on August the 1st only. Rather late for public comments, it resembles nothing short of a donkey's hind leg. The plan indicates footway widths varying from 1 to 1.2 to 1.5 metres, except for the site boundaries. Highways stated in March that a width of 2 metres was the absolute minimum requirement. Anything narrower to me is negligent on a road with well-documented speeding issues. Resident safety surely should take precedence. Parents, carers with children, the family dog, taking their children to school, to play, to shop with prams and buggies, whilst older children on scooters race along, careless of the fact that not only is the footway too narrow, its very width is subject to constant change. And what of walkers coming towards them? How will they manage? And wheelchairs? An adult self-propelled chair can be 71 centimetres wide, excluding the user's arms, bent at the elbow with no wiggle room before pitching into the road, where the footway, scheduled at 100 centimetres wide, will accommodate and protect a light column. Can our children, the disabled and vulnerable, be ignored, put at serious risk of projecting wing mirrors, HGVs, buses and speeding cars? Not only is the footway unsafe here, but this development absolutely adversely impacts our community, ignores the strength of local opinion, destroys our landscape and potentially ruins a farmer's living. Farmers, the lifeblood of Somerset. Metres away, an abandoned, derelict, hideous eyesore is a brownfield site that a government inspector states, with improved design, will be granted permission for 120 houses. So why build another 40 on a greenfield site outside the village boundary, fraught with problems, going against so many of your own stated guidelines? We urge refusal. The tilted balance applied incorrectly interprets any positive impacts for our community and are demonstrably outweighed by negative impacts. Paragraph 11D MPPF refers. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Priest. Welcome. Right. We now move on to representative from Evercreech Parish Council, Councillor Gail Wakefield. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I am speaking today on behalf of Evercreech Parish Council. We wish to reaffirm the comments we submitted on the 2nd of May 2024. We continue to strongly object to this application. First and foremost, this proposed development lies outside the designated settlement boundary on a greenfield site where development should be strictly controlled. It also falls within an odour exclusion zone. Now the applicant has submitted an odour assessment report, but we must ask, what value does a series of 5-minute sniff tests really have when they were conducted while no pigs were on the site? The answer, quite honestly, is negligible. And it is not just odour. Living 15 metres from 600 peaks raises other concerns too, noise, for example. We are deeply concerned that the proposed footpath is just 1 to 1.5 metres wide, well below the standard requirement of 2 metres. To make it compliant, the proposal suggests reducing Presley Road carriageway to 5.5 metres. This is the main road into the village. Narrowing it to that extent is completely unworkable, even dangerous, resulting in possible serious collisions. We are talking about a road that is regularly used by large agricultural vehicles, HGVs, coaches and everyday traffic. There is also serious visibility and turning issues at the proposed entrance, especially for refuse collection vehicles. Public transport in the village has been severely reduced in recent years and is now unreliable. The planning officer states no dwelling hereby permitted shall be occupied until a scheme showing precise details of the proposed cycle parking. Why? We have no cycle links or paths within Evercreech. In reality, a private vehicle is essential to live here. Your own local plan 2 clearly states that Evercreech has already experienced significant development, 95 more homes than was planned for the village. The Greencore site, which remains within the LPP2, has been identified as suitable for a mixed-use development of housing and employment, potentially delivering over 100 homes within the settlement boundary. In summary, we urge you to refuse this application on the following reasons. It lies outside the designated settlement boundary, within an odour exclusion zone. The odour assessment report is flawed and unreliable. The proposal places unsustainable pressure on the village overstretched infrastructure, including Victorian sewers. It would have a significant and negative impact on the rural character of Oakreach, the highway issues and the flood risks. Our question would be, why does the use of the tilted balance appear to be continually applied in favour of the applicants? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wakefield. Right, I think we have just one more speaker, Andy Shepley, who is the planning agent for OG Planning Limited, and I believe is online.
Yes, so can you hear me?
Would you like to turn your camera on, and you have
Yes.
2 minutes as with the other applicants?
Sorry, yes, thank you, Chair. As you'd expect, we fully endorse the case officer's report and recommendation to grant planning permission for this proposal. Hopefully members have been able to review the briefing note we sent round at the end of last week, which sets out the key benefits of this development. There's not a great deal to add to the officer's report, but I'd make the following points just to assist you with your discussions. First, as members will be aware, the former Mendip district area cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. We understand supply is currently at 2.84 years, which represents a significant shortfall of 2,284 dwellings. On this basis, it's considered the council should be approving sustainable developments such as this to assist with this shortfall. As the officer's report makes clear, the application site lies on the edge of the designated primary village of Evercreach, within easy walking distance of village facilities, including the local primary school. The site does not lie within any national or local landscape or heritage areas, and no adverse effects have been raised to this development by statutory consultees, including highways and environmental health. Detailed issues relating to design, drainage, landscape, boundary treatments, etc. can be appropriately dealt with at reserved matters stage. Whilst it's accepted the site lies outside the development limits of Evercreach, this is the only departure from the development plan. The significant benefits associated with the proposal, namely the delivery up to 40 new homes, 30% of which will comprise much needed affordable homes, overall outweighs this very limited harm to the spatial strategy. With reference to surface water drainage, we've seen the recent statement issued by Mr. O'Connor, and we've asked the applicant's drainage consultant to comment on this to help members. Importantly, this proposed development is not discharging to the ditch Mr. O'Connor has concerns about. Where this development does connect, Wessex Water has confirmed they have capacity in their network for discharge at 10 litres per second maximum, whereas this development is only proposing to discharge at a maximum rate of 3.5 litres per second. There's also mentioned a concern that the SUD system will not be able to discharge water quickly enough during heavy downpours and would flood both his house and the road. We'd advise that the SUDS network has been sized to accommodate all storm events up to and including a 1 in 100 year event, plus a 45% allowance for climate change. As members will know, the point of SUDS is to slow water down from entering the system, not speed it up. It needs to be emphasised also that the LLFA has been consulted on this application and has advised no objection, subject to the imposition of conditions relating to sustainable surface water drainage and ongoing SUDS management, which is acceptable to the applicant. In conclusion, based on the NPPF tilted balance, the significant benefits of this scheme far outweigh the limited harm to the spatial strategy, and the application should be approved in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to the committee, and we have a number of people asking to speak. And I'll ask you to indicate in the normal way. First of all, I have Councillor Reid and then Councillor Sully, both who are ward members.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, we've heard a lot of views here this afternoon. And let's be clear, what we're talking about, Pressley Road is the main road in and out of Evercreach, a very busy road going to a very busy village. We've been concerned about what's been going on in Pressley Road for some considerable time. the word green core has come up quite a few times, and we were hoping that green core would be resolved before we got to anything else. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. Green core is still hanging over us like the sword of Damocles. But here we are. We've got to resolve this case that's put forward today. I have a lot of sympathy with Mr. Julian from the CPRE, who made quite a stirring case for turning it down, including saying the number of houses that have been built in Evercreech over the last few years, far more than was required. But we also are well aware of this tilted balance, which has also been hanging over us and we've been struggling with for a long, long time. I don't believe we need more houses, but we're told we've got to have them. If we've got to have them, well, this site isn't that bad. It is connected to the rest of the village with offside footpath, great. However, there are two, as I see it, two serious flaws with this application, as it is in a minute, and a conundrum. The serious flaw, the flooding. Anybody who can remember the 2008 flooding in Evercreech, which was terrible, Watery Lane turned into a river, Enfield Drive, all the houses were flooded out. It's not good. It hasn't been resolved since. It could happen again tomorrow. And the second serious flaw, as I see it, is best way to describe it is safe routes to school. I don't know if we can get another map up of the site again, could we please? We're told they're going to put in a 1 metre wide footpath to the north of Prestley Road, which will allow children to walk along and go up Maysdown Road to the school. I put it to you that 1 metre is totally inadequate. We're herding our children out onto a busy road, onto an inadequate footpath unnecessarily. I don't know if you could point out the school, which is at the top of the site, top right. Thank you very much. And the sites with the star on. We shouldn't have to go all the way up Prestley Road and along and up Maysdown. It's quite simple to put a decent footpath between that site and the school, which would give a safe route to school. It would protect our children. And I'm not aware that the applicant has spoken to the landowner, who I believe is this council, about putting in a footpath. That is the obvious and easy thing to do. I mean, if we don't do things like that, what we're doing is we're accepting the least bad planning that we can, rather than getting good planning. I can't support this application without a safe route to school for our children. And the conundrum, it's been pointed out, there is a pig farm there, 40 metres from the site. If I was to apply to put in a pig farm 40 metres from a housing estate, would that be accepted? I'm not sure it would. So why are we accepting a housing estate 40 metres from a pig farm? It's a question to be asked. Have the applicants met up with the farmer to discuss this at all? Made some kind of arrangement? I don't know. I would like to hear an answer to that. Yeah. At the moment, those are the problems that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to, Rods, do you want to respond to those questions before we go on to the next?
If it would be helpful, Chair, yeah, happy to. And I think there's a number of other points that have been made. I don't know whether you want responses or let me know if there's more information that members need. But I think the first point to make is in relation to the pig farm, where we received additional correspondence in relation to the current status of the pig farm relatively recently. So I put that to environmental health colleagues because I shared the concerns of everybody else. If the odour assessment was not up to snuff, then we needed to do something else. I specifically asked the question of whether or not the fact that there weren't pigs on the site at the time of the odour assessment would invalidate the response that we'd had from them, invalidate the conclusions, and they were really clear and said no. The sniff test was only one part of the assessment that was undertaken, so the absence of livestock on the farm doesn't invalidate the findings of the odour assessment. And I appreciate that that feels counterintuitive, but that's the professional advice that I've been given. So we've got both the applicant's professional advisors and also your professional advisors saying that the odour assessment is valid and that the development would not unduly impact on the operation of the pig farm. So that's point one. Point two, in relation to the accessibility and the pedestrian connection link, well, that's not what's been proposed. I don't know what conversations the applicant has had about alternative routes, but it would go through a number of, there might be a public ownership in there, but likely a number of private ownerships. If that were the only option, then the Cambridge approach to ransom strips, I think it's Cambridge case, is that if you own a ransom strip, you are entitled to 30% of the value of a development. So then that would come off things like affordable housing. So there is a question there about whether or not that would then be an acceptable form of development if we required them to go that way. But that's not what's in front of us. What we've got in front of us is a scheme with the pedestrian connectivity being delivered down Prestley Road. My highways colleagues have agreed that what's proposed is acceptable, and therefore there is no technical pedestrian reason for refusal of that one. The third matter was in relation to flooding. Watery Lane clearly has local characteristics. What we've got is a scheme for surface water drainage that has been developed by technical specialists and agreed by your technical specialists in the Lead Local Flood Authority to be acceptable. It's a combination, as I said before, of attenuation crates under the road and the surface water drainage pond above ground. So we've got the combination of above and below ground methods of storage and delay, and given the size of the scheme, probably a valve, a one-way valve, so that the water stays on the site rather than coming out into the network as well. So to answer the two flaws and a conundrum, I'm not sure, well, I don't see any support or evidence in the application for those concerns. Environmental Health, Highways and the Lead Local Flood Authority are all content with the proposals as they've been put forward, subject to conditions and obligations.
Thank you. You indicated that you wanted to respond to something else, which you mean said. Would you like to do it now before we go to the next question?
So I think those are probably the 3 points that have been coming up again and again, aren't they? And they are matters that are shared by everybody. And the other one is, is Greencore, which isn't what's before us. And I know that's really tricky, but having Greencore in the background doesn't mean that we can not decide this application. And this application, it is, as you noted, on the edge of a primary village. It's a good location for development. It sits well within the built envelope. It's an additional 40 units or roughly 100 people to a settlement of 2,500-ish. So it is a relatively small addition. That, in line with the inspector's comments, would not be outside of the scale of the level of development that Evercreech might be expected to take. So I appreciate and hear and understand all the concerns. They're all things that I was thinking about very much when I was looking at this application. Hopefully they're all covered in the conditions and obligations that we've put forward to try and control the development. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Chair. Would you mind please putting the first picture up that you showed, please, in your presentation, apart from the map, Google map? No, the one before. Go back, please. No, sorry. Go carry on. I think it was another. If you carry on. Yeah, if you go that one. Am I right? And is that the farm? No, okay. Can you go back and show one of the pictures with the farm, please? Okay,
So just so you can see what you're looking at. Oh, sorry. Here, you've got the application site with the red line around it.
yeah,
This is farm buildings, but it's not the pig farm. The pig farm is along the top of the site, at the edge of this photo.
yeah.
I tried to include it. I snipped this a bit tight.
Okay.
So it is.
Thanks for that. So I did a site visit. I did a site visit 24, and the chair of the planning board came with me, but Watery Lane, the access to look at the proposed area for development was so wet we couldn't get there, which I thought was quite interesting, and that wasn't particularly when there was bad weather there. So it's the difficult service there. I can be corrected here, but during that presentation, the farm wasn't really mentioned, and it's a working farm up to 600 pigs at periods. And I'm wondering about the odour of pigs. My sister used to live in Bagborough Lane, and I used to stay there and babysit. And I love the smells of the countryside. I love like the cows and all that, but pigs, it's like chickens. It really is not pleasant. It's uncomfortable and really, really, can you say difficult smell to kind of be around? And there is, I think, I don't understand the sort of diminishing of the odour risks. We need to ask ourselves, do people like to live next to pig farms? Would they complain? Because another thing that there's a big old report, isn't there, that says there was no complaints about. I think if you live nearish a pig farm, you don't really complain because the pig farm was there. Usually, the farm comes first, but it's not something that I don't think people would welcome. This is really quite close because I have walked on site and I've seen the distance. And what was it? 40 meters? Was it?
40 yards.
40 yards. Yeah. So I think we've almost got to the preposterous position that it doesn't matter if the pigs and their odour were there during an odour test. I find that a bit, so if it doesn't matter that there were no pigs on site and there was no smell of pigs, well, you could do any odour test and remove the thing that creates the odour and say there's no actual problem with the odour, couldn't you? So I find that quite odd. So I think just before I get to my question, I just want to mention about flooding. Being the local member with my colleague Rob, flooding has come up a lot, countless times. I've lost count, and in a weary kind of, the residents are weary of it because they know that there's not a lot that can be done, and it's very frustrating. Well, not a lot to be done because there's so much flooding in Somerset and in our part of Somerset. But it comes up a lot, and it's very, very difficult for residents that are there. So my question about the harms, the tilted balance and the outweighing the benefits. How many farms being ruined or being put out of business or having their business hampered by housing estate, close proximity, is a harm? Is it one? Or if you don't think it's going to be a harm, you're then saying that the odour of up to 600 pigs is not an impact on residents. So it's one or the other. It's either, I can't see how it's no odour, no impact, or this farm being impacted by people living that close. Because I think if anyone around this, we're from the country, we all know our smells, don't we? I think it's a very, very difficult thing to expect to put onto people. So yeah, how many farms is a harm Just to add that I do know that the farming community around that area, I went to a funeral when I was first elected of a very well-known, wonderful woman, and spoke to many farmers, and they were talking about this a couple of years ago, talking about how difficult it was, the challenges, but also the future and people taking over the farms, you know, the succession, children not necessarily taking over farms. So I think we've got to really look after our farms, and we've got to make sure that our farmer in this situation, his voice is heard. So how many farms being impacted by this housing estate is a harm? That's my question.
I'll respond to your question there, Councillor.
Yeah,
That's all right, Vice Chairman. I think just in terms of the report that we've set out for you and the assessment that we've offered, we're not identifying a harm in relation to the way in which the development would affect the operation of Pig Farm. Again, you've seen the advice that your specialist advisor has provided, and again, you know, we like you as elected members have to decide whether or not we are going to take the advice of the specialist advisors that the council employs to provide guidance on odour management issues. So we've reported it, and we have taken their advice and balanced that as part of our assessment of the planning application.
Can I just respond? But in the past, you have seen it as a problem, the odour, and it's the same pigs.
I suspect the difference being is that the applicant and the applicant's team have provided an updated evidence base that the officer in the environmental protection team has considered.
Thank you for that. We now move on to Councillor Ham.
Thank you, Chair. Got several points I'd like to make. The first one is, should we approve this site, how would that affect Green Core site coming forward in the future regards water, drainage, sewerage, or traffic, etc., etc. It's all right passing this one, but if we know we've got 100 houses, it may be 2 years down the line coming. If we put this in, could we stop that? That's question one. Second question is, have we considered the loss of agricultural land here, plus the land they're going to take up for the phosphate by fallowing land? Nobody's mentioned that. And my third point is going back to the pig farm, and thank you, Councillor Sully, for all those kind words. I was a pig farmer for 40 odd years. I know a lot about pig farming, and to say there'd be no smell is absolutely ridiculous. I would imagine these pigs are what I call bed and breakfast pigs. They come in as little tiny pigs, they grow big enough for slaughter out, and then you restock. And then, so there is a period of perhaps a couple of weeks, 3 weeks when they're empty, another 3 or 4 weeks when they're little pigs and they don't smell, make a lot, and then suddenly they become big pigs, make a lot of smell, a lot of flies, a lot of odour, and a lot of noise at feeding time. Nobody's mentioned noise. Then on top of that, when they go out, there's the manure removal, which does smell and will really smell. So the advice you've had from a specialist, in my mind, is absolutely rubbish. So I will not be supporting this, and I'd like some answers to my questions. Oh, and one more thing. This council needs to learn from history, because years ago, this Kingdown Farm at Priddy took this council to judicial review over a pig farm next door and lost big time.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. I don't have any other. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Denton.
Thank you. I've just, I wanted to mention as well about the farmland. So thank you, Philip, for bringing that one up. I know it's currently not being used. I think that's what I saw, but what is the grade of the land, which I think is a concern. I've also noticed that it says affordable housing, but there's nothing about social housing, which I just wanted to know why specifically. The ODO, as we've mentioned, it also says on page 29, this clearly conflicts with the spatial strategy. It also says in CP2, the paragraph under CP2, that they have taken more than their fair share, 165 houses, which is more than what they were allocated, I think, of 70. And I am concerned that the conversation with the farmer hasn't happened. And I just think that I agree with Councillor Ham, really, that I can't support this after hearing the discussion this afternoon. So I'd like to put forward I think I'm trying to think of the words of which ones that are proposals a good word. But I just wanted to come up with what specifically we were going to go against officer recommendation on. So I'm not quite there yet, but I will be. Yeah.
Sorry, I'd like to say that my voice will project anyway, but we won't go there. I really want to just echo everything, particularly what we've heard from Councillor Ham. You know, we're listening to the voice of knowledge here, and I think it would be absolutely ridiculous for us to ignore it. And really, above all, I just don't feel that we can forget we're here to represent the people. I trust the local people, and I know myself from driving down that road, it's always flooded. I used to have my dog groomed in the grooming parlour there. She would have to ring me up and say, you can't get through. I'd have to borrow a Land Rover from a friend to collect my dog. There is an issue with flooding which we cannot afford to make worse. And furthermore, you know, actually we are here to protect farmers, particularly when we've got a government who won't. So I think as councillors, we should have our voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question. Could we have up on the screen the indicative map, please? Could you tell me how many garages? I know it's indicative, but I think it's quite important that if we look at these things, and they will give us a steer if it would come back at any time. How many garages has that been allocated for the 70 dwellings? I.e., is it placemaking compliant or is it something else?
I'm really sorry, Chair. I haven't counted the garages.
Almost impossible on that drawing.
But because it's an outline just with access. What you can see on this illustrative plan is that there would be some off-plot parking. So through this road here, there's off-plot parking to the front of the properties. There's a small parking court here indicated, but then many of the other properties have parking by their sides. But what I don't know is whether it would be intended that they would also have an integral garage to provide a third space.
Could I just have it recognised that this village is not as well served by buses as you would think, and it shouldn't be a placemaking village where there are only carports and few parking. It needs to be substantial. And it's just been pointed out. I'm concerned not about cycle parking, I'm just talking about the availability to put cars on the site. And the second question I have, and I think I know the answer, the 30% affordable is policy compliant with 80% social housing?
That's correct.
Yes, Chair, the proposal is entirely in line with the policy targets for affordable housing.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Unless there's anyone else, I think it's Councillor Ham, and then can we perhaps go to a vote on this one, please? Councillor Ham.
Thank you, Chair. My questions were not even answered.
My apologies if that's the case. Do you want to repeat the question or have you?
Yeah, no, we made a note of the questions. I mean, I think Councillor Ham, you expressed two opinions, and clearly your opinions about how much weight you're going to give the council specialist advisors on flooding and on environmental protection and odour and other disturbances from the pig farm. You know, you've clearly got a firm view as to how you are going to balance the views of the council specialists from your own assessment. I think in terms of the Greencore question that you asked, effectively at the moment there isn't a planning permission to redevelop the Greencore site. Yes, they had an appeal, and the result of that appeal has been published, and yet the comments from the government inspector with regards to the residential component are favourable, but at the moment there isn't a planning permission for a scheme at Greencore. If planning permission is granted for this scheme, and then there's a subsequent application for Greencore, then in terms of assessing the impacts of the revised Greencore scheme, they would need to take into account the cumulative impacts of other developments that have been issued in the locality. So your position as a committee on any future application at Greencore wouldn't be prejudiced by making a positive decision on this application today. I think the only other question, not specifically that you asked, but Councillor Denton asked about conflict with the spatial strategy. Yes, you're right. The report identifies that this application is in conflict with the spatial strategy. But what we have to do as a local planning authority, both as officers and members, is not make our decision based on that fact alone. What we have to do is we have to recognise that it is outside of the settlement boundary, and then conclude whether it be contrary to the aims and principles of the spatial strategy in allocating sites for sustainable development. If you look at the Greencore decision, the inspector did conclude that because of the Greencore site in relation to the village of Evercreech, it wouldn't be an unsustainable location, and it wouldn't be although it would be contrary, it wouldn't be against the spirit of the spatial strategy. And our advice as officers is that you'd apply that same thinking with the spatial relationship between the site and Evercreech with this application.
Okay, Councillor.
One other not answered question was, what grade is the land and what area is being taken out as fallow to cover the phosphates?
The grade is grade 3.
Okay, thank you. And the other question was the phosphate mitigation impact on land use.
I mean that just tells us that the phosphate mitigation land won't be agriculturally used while it's fulfilling a role as part of the phosphate mitigation.
Okay, but I think the question was how much land will be required for the mitigation.
Yeah, we do know. We're just trying to find out the exact size of the phosphate mitigation.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that then, if that is not possible to come back readily. Okay, then. What we need is, could the officer put up the 106 contributions and the recommendation at the beginning of the report, and we'll take it to a vote. Thank you. Right. Could I have a proposal from somebody? Sorry.
Sorry, just point of order. There was a proposal and I think there was a seconder, but there wasn't actually any confirmation as to what the proposal seconding is. So can I get details of that?
We haven't got.
I think I physically moved my hand, but I did not second it. So, yeah, so you didn't, that's why you didn't hear her, but I welcome the seconder over that side of the, if he wishes to.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a proposal. Who put forward a proposal?
Councillor Dawn Denton did raise some concern with a view to sort of suggesting an alternative to approving. I don't know if that was refusal or deferral. But again, that wasn't expanded on in terms of the reasons or anything like that. So my role as lead officer is to try and help members make the most defendable decision that you can make, given what I'm hearing around the room. So given what I'm hearing around the room, members, when they look at the concerns and what they're concerned about, will need to consider what we can and what we can't object to in terms of from a planning perspective. So one of the concerns that's been raised that I have heard a lot around the table is regard to potential odour issues with the farm. The fact the odour assessment that was undertaken and submitted with the planning application said there isn't a problem, but the reason there isn't a problem is that the farm wasn't at that point in use. So the question I think members can quite reasonably ask themselves is actually if the farm were in use, which it does look like it is suggested by the farmer, could occur without the benefit of any further planning permissions, what would that mean for any future residential development, and would there be a conflict as a result of that? So in terms of that, I think members would be well within their rights and very comfortable in terms of deferring the application to allow further questions to go back in terms of the odour assessment and the impact on the neighbours. If members were not happy to defer it, they could recommend refusal, but it'd be refusal on insufficient information for members to be satisfied that there wouldn't be an undue harm, because we do not have confirmation one way or another that there would be harm categorically. And we do have a professional in the field saying there isn't harm, but we understand there isn't a harm because there weren't any pigs. So in terms of just making sure members are in a point that's safe for them to make a decision, having fully considered all the material considerations. The other issue that I've heard a lot around the table is about flooding. The flooding issue within the planning application, there is no requirement in planning policy for developments to fix existing situations. What developments have to do is they need to not make anything worse. And that doesn't make sense, and it runs contrary to a lot of what the local residents obviously want from the planning system. But the planning system is stuck in that we cannot make anything worse. It would be lovely if we can make stuff better, and we do push for that where we can. But the policy test, the line that members have to consider is the scheme making anything worse? If the answer to that is no, then flood risk and the impact of this development in respect of flood risk cannot be a sustainable reason for refusal. In terms of the public speaking, there was confirmation from the agent at the beginning in terms of the particular area where there's surface water flooding. The drainage that they are proposing doesn't go into that particular bit. So that's just something I wanted to put on the members. Members would be within their right, in my opinion, to look at odour, potential odour and potential lack of information in respect of what that means relative to residential amenity.
Councillor Dimmery.
Now, I'll be reminded, please, what the final say was over the width of the pavement. I've sort of lost track of that in the debate. We were concerned, there were concerns issued about the width of the pavement, which I thought was possibly contradicted by some of the, could we get a final view on that, please?
Okay, thank you. Could we have the measurements, because they vary?
So the key point to note is that the proposed width of the footpath as put forward by the applicant has been found to be acceptable by the Somerset Highways team. So it's been through initial safety audit. It does vary. It is in places below the optimal, the 2 metres. And the reason for the ongoing dialogue with the Highways team was to make sure that we weren't below that for too long, because as as we've talked about, having a narrow pavement can sometimes be worse than having no pavement at all. So having gone through that safety audit process and looked at what we think is achievable, which does vary between just under 1.5 to 1.5, and then in some places it will be closer to the 2 or the 2. We've got a scheme that is overall acceptable to the Highways Authority. So it isn't gold standard, but it is acceptable to the Highways Authority.
Okay, thank you for that. On the pavement issue, if we are going to consider deferral, could I ask that that the agency explores the opportunity to have in addition to the pavement, but a very specific across the field route to the school, a safe route to school. I think that is, and if the landholding is the council in part, then that should be able to have an expedited discussion. I think that I wasn't going to initially raise that point because I think that it can be taken outside, but given if we are minded to defer to obtain more information, then I think we could add that to that list. Thank you. Right. Sorry, Susie.
Given that noise and odour can be considered loss of amenity, I would suggest that the proposer uses that as grounds for refusal to vote against officer recommendation. That's just an idea.
Okay, so do we have now a proposal from you, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. To go against officer recommendation, and if amenity of odour and noise could be used, then that would be the reason for us to be able to go against officer recommendation, if that's what people are minded to do.
Dawn?
Thank you. Yeah, so given there isn't any evidence to suggest there would be, I'm not saying there isn't or there wouldn't be, but given there isn't currently any evidence, the reason for refusal would have to be insufficient information to demonstrate that there would be appropriate amenity for future residents in terms of noise and odour. So if members just want to think about that in terms of the options, obviously if it was refused on that basis, the only thing the applicant would need to do would be to demonstrate that in use, the adjoining farm would then be acceptable in terms of noise and odour. Potentially a deferral would also enable members to consider an alternative option point, access to the school, but it is members' decision. So I will pass over for members. Yeah.
Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Dawn. What about mentioning previous cases that Councillor Ham mentioned about when there had been a pig farm and was it Mendip District Council was taken to judicial? Pretty, yeah. So, you know, it's not like we're year zero, is it? Like this is the first time it's happened, or is that how planning is now? We are year zero. We forget that has happened before.
I think that the challenge that members have is if the use wasn't in operation, you cannot tell what the noise and odour of the use would be. If the use gets reintroduced, there are legislative requirements for pig farming that may not have existed at the point that it previously had the appeal. So if it were introduced with the new constraints or licences and the different regimes that they have to do through the Environment Agency, you don't actually know what the impact would be, which is why the recommendation is insufficient information, just because it hasn't been proven one way or another.
I just come back. I think we need to really make it clear it's about cycles of animals, pigs on that farm. It's, as far as I'm aware, unless somebody tells me differently, it's not like it's a farm that doesn't have or doesn't plan to have pigs, but they're there at intermittent periods. So I think I don't want people, should we be given the impression that this is a farm that doesn't have pigs but might have pigs in the future, or is it a farm that has pigs at periods of time and has the power to do that whenever this is somebody who is a pig, this is a business that is a pig farm business. It's not a redundant operation, and that's that. Unless somebody tells me different, that's how I read it.
Okay. Councillor Ham?
Just picking up on Councillor Sully's points. Any business that runs cannot be running at 100% every day of the week. And if you're dealing with animals, you have to have break periods, otherwise you get disease build-up. And it's just common knowledge that there would be a break. Now, I would like to know who said there was no pigs there, because it's that on one particular day. I mean, it's like a farmer, he grows a crop, he cuts the crop, the field's then empty. Does that make that field redundant? No. It's a process, it's a cycle. And I mean, I don't know where this information's come from, but whoever's come up with it is absolutely rubbish.
Okay, I think we all recognise that farming is a cyclical business, and we do need to have clarity around this information. I think that question is, and sorry, Councillor Demery, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I'm the concern I have about this is that we've asked these questions, and we are really around this table questioning some of the advice we've been given. One to do with the odour. We're concerned about the pavement. We have concerns about the possibility, we'd like to see the possibility of a safe walk to school. My worry about this is that we could turn this down, and we'll turn it down, and it may suffer at appeal, and the village will get nothing from that appeal. So I am going to, I think, test the water by suggesting we defer it on the basis, one, of the odour issue that we would like to be reconsidered, and the footpaths which we would like to see firm guidance on, and the addition of, or at least the investigation into a safe footway to school. And now it's up to people if they support that or not. But I think perhaps we need an alternative, an alternative proposal here.
Thank you, Mr. Furman. I actually asked for this to go up on the screen, because we must remember that this is the 106 agreement, which has been negotiated and has great benefit in several of the lines to the community, and we mustn't forget that. So trying to resolve it rather than a straight out no is, I think, worthy of support, and I'm happy to support your proposal that we defer to get additional information on the items you requested. Yes, Councillor.
I mean, I'd love to agree with you in an ideal world, but as we know, 106 gets used anywhere. So we've heard that the school is full. Are you telling me that £400,000 is going to go to the local school?
I'm not saying, I'm just, I'm looking at your comment about 106 isn't used anyway. It's here, these criteria have been negotiated for this particular application. It's not the case in every application.
So £400,000 will go to the school in Evercreech. 40 times 9,000. 9,000 per dwelling times 40 houses.
So just for the avoidance of doubt on that,
to the school.
there is, it's secondary, I can't remember if it's secondary or not, but it is split between early years, special educational needs, primary school and secondary provision. So the contributions are those that have been asked for by education colleagues to help deal with the capacity issue. I would have expected the 106 to be clear that they need to be spent to resolve the issues that this development causes. So whether that is in Evercreech or whether that's in an adjoining village to free up capacity, and you know, it's like one of those slidey jigsaw puzzles sometimes, isn't it? You have to improve something somewhere else. I don't know, but that's it. Otherwise, we can't ask for it. It's not compliant with the SIL regulations. It has to be fairly and reasonably related to the development and on a project in that place.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I understand how it works. I'm just trying to point it out to everybody else, I guess.
Thank you. We've got a proposal on the table with a seconder. That's Councillor Demery at the moment. I will take.
Sorry, I think Leslie was going to come in, but when Councillor Denton made her first proposal to refuse. Councillor Sully did second it, possibly not on the microphone, but she did second, because I have minuted that. So I do think that the proposal was proposed and
I
seconded.
think we were kind of cut short. I think that was, you know, I felt that once you'd said it, it wasn't taken any further.
I did not hear it as a proposal or a second. My apologies for that.
Yeah.
You just asked a question about an alternative word to deferral.
Chair, if I
Can you advise on this? Do we have a proposal from Councillor Danton or not?
On the basis of what the clerk has said, she's recorded it. Some of us didn't hear it, but we have a proposal from Councillor Denton, supported by Councillor Sully.
Okay.
And that was to go against the officer recommendation. So that is the first proposal supported on the table. So you have to take a vote on that.
Okay, if that's the case, then can we please ask all members to be clear if you're making a proposal? It's difficult if you having a conversation, comment about what is an alternative word. But yes, we have one. I also have somebody wishing to speak. Councillor Denton, do you wish your proposal to remain?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And can you please tell me the wording of it?
To go against officer recommendation on the grounds of loss of amenity from noise, odour and loss of agricultural land.
Okay. Councillor Clark, is it substantive at this time for you to make a comment? No, thank you. And so we have a proposal from Councillor Denton with Councillor Sully seconding and Dawn.
I just want confirmation. So in terms of the reason for refusal, it would be loss of agricultural land, because that's absolutely, that's that land parcel, it's agricultural land, so you're looking at loss of that land. In terms of noise and odour, given the professional reports you've got with the planning application, say at that point in time there wasn't an issue, and we have had confirmation that that odour assessment is true for that moment in time, are we satisfied it's insufficient information in terms of odour and noise? Because actually what we're missing is the information from when that farm is fully occupied and in use.
Yeah, so my concern really is that the...
Just a point on that, if it's okay, members, just to really help you consider what Dawn as the service leaders is asking you to consider for your revised recommendation. I've actually got a copy of the Environmental Protection Officer's comments, and I will just read it out for you just so you're aware, because it's not quite the same as what you may have understood. So I've reviewed the attached letter and have now had the opportunity to familiarise myself with the submitted odour assessment. The odour assessment acknowledges that at the time of the sniff tests, there were not any pigs present at the farm. However, the sniff test forms only a small part of the assessment, and the main assessment has considered the odour potential from Water Farm as being medium based on a worst case scenario. Considering other factors such as wind speed, direction of and sensitivity of receptors, the report concludes that the potential odour impact on this proposed development is not significant. So again, just so you've got that information.
Councillor Denton.
My concern really is that often the lived experience of the people in the environment and the reports don't always match up. And that's why I'm standing firm on this. And the rest of the committee has the option to vote against me and go for the second proposal. But I want to stick with that one because I think that that's the lived experience of the people in the village.
Okay. So, Dawn, do you want to say anything further about the...
No, so I'm happy based on what Councillor Denton said. It's effectively loss of agricultural land and insufficient information to demonstrate that there wouldn't be an unacceptable impact on amenity in terms of noise and odour. Yeah.
Right, Councillor Pam, and then we will go to a vote.
Something that Councillor Reid said earlier, you would not build a pig farm 40 metres away from a housing estate. So why build a housing estate 40 metres away from a pig farm?
Thank you. Right, we have a proposal in front of us with a seconder. I would like to have support for or not for this proposal, please. Can you show No hands accordingly.
For?
For the proposal.
No.
Sorry, hang on. Yet again, lack of clarity. Can we read it out once more, your proposal?
So if members are quite happy to vote for councillor Denton's sort of overturn of officers recommendation, so it's a recommendation for refusal on loss of agricultural land and insufficient information in terms of noise and odour potentially adversely impacting on the amenities of future residents. So if
Thank
members
you.
are happy to vote.
Is everyone clear what they're voting on? Yep. Could I have a show of hands then for the proposal? Seven in favour. And those against? One. And abstentions? Two. The recommendation of the report, as you see in front of you, has been refused, and we're going with the proposal as voted upon. Yep. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. Right. We'll now move on to item 6. Do people want to have 5 minutes?
That's asked twice today.
Good afternoon again. After a short break, we'll recommence the Planning East committee, and we now move to agenda item 6. And I believe we have a presentation this afternoon.
We do, Vice Chair. I'm going to do it on behalf of Carlton because unfortunately he's not able to attend the meeting today. But he's prepared a presentation which I will now present to you. So this application is for, I've got to go back and present the teams of places. So it is for a application in Beckington, address there Edenvale Cottage Mill Lane. It's for the erection of a self-built dwelling, and the plan application reference is 2025-0243. You'll see from the report pack that Carlton's included the planning history, some of which will be relevant to your assessment, and I will highlight in the presentation that we've got for you this afternoon. So the site location, for those of you that know Beckington, it's outside of the village boundary and basically on the way to the River Frome. There's another slide which gives you a slightly better understanding of its relationship in terms of the River Frome. So again, it's on Mill Lane. It's outside of the settlement boundary, and this slide here effectively just scopes the extent of the application site. And again, as covered in the report, the application site is the same site that was granted planning permission for an office building stroke garage stroke outbuilding under application reference 217-2291. And that was approved in October 2018. And as you'll see from subsequent photographs, the applicant has started to, but not completely implemented that planning permission. Have I lost the presentation? So again, just a location plan showing the full extent of the red line, and you can see there at the bottom of that slide how vehicle access will be provided to the site. Again, a fairly simple proposal. It's a single-storey building with a green roof proposal, as shown here. And again, in terms of the floor plan, again, you can see that accommodation would include 2 bedrooms and then an open plan area that separate the 2 bedrooms with the front door effectively in that position there. Next photo, again, proposed elevations, just confirming that arrangement. We've included this one because this shows the location of a residential unit that was granted on the host house to which the land relates to for a certificate of lawfulness as a self-contained flat. Again, we've referred to that in the report. The applicant is suggesting that they would be happy to, if you like, revoke the terms of that lawful development certificate so that that self-contained use within 2 rooms of the host property discontinues if you as a committee were to grant planning permission for their application today. But again, we've set out in the report why we don't really think that that would be an acceptable fallback position in relation to this planning application proposal, because the certificate was granted on the basis that there's actually support for that arrangement in the National Planning Policy Framework. So this slide just basically shows the site location in relation to the highway, with the property with a photograph on the left. You can see the host house presenting there, and then the photograph on the right actually shows the extent of the proposed area, and you can see from that that as I said earlier on, the applicant has started to implement the terms of the outbuilding consent which they got in 2018, for which this application, if it was permitted, would be built on the same footprint. Again, finally, just some images showing the location of the site, confirming the rural location, proximity to the River Frome. And then finally, Carl's just confirmed his recommendation for you to consider, that set out in the report back, and he's recommending refusal for that reason. That's the end of the presentation, Chair. So I will take it down, and if there are any questions members have got, we will try and answer them.
Okay, thank you. We go first to the agent from Salmon Planning, Dean Titchener.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I act as the planning agent for this application, which seeks permission for a single dwelling on land off Mill Lane, Beckington. This is a carefully considered proposal designed to meet the needs of my client, who is 80 years old and has lived and farmed at Edenvale Farm just along Mill Lane since the 1970s. Her current home is a large farmhouse that has become increasingly difficult to manage. This modest new dwelling would allow her to downsize to a same level property or remain in the community she's been part of for over 50 years, close to her family and support. The proposed dwelling would be built on the footprint of a previously approved garage and office, and has been designed to match that consented building in size, height, and general appearance. It is modest in scale, single story, low in profile, and set down below the level of the adjoining lane, meaning it would not appear visually prominent in the landscape. Importantly, the officer's report acknowledges that the proposed dwelling would have no greater impact on the character or appearance of the area than the approved garage. This is an important and relevant comparison. While the officer raises concerns about the introduction of domestic paraphernalia and parking, we would respectfully point out that this would be no different from the approved garage and office scheme. That also involved hard standing, vehicle access, and a domestic presence, and was found acceptable in planning terms. The site adjoins existing residential development and is only a short walk from the village's services and facilities. To address any concern about new residential development in the countryside, a unilateral undertaking has been provided to give up an existing lawful flat at Edenvale Farm and to preclude any future subdivision of the main farmhouse, ensuring there is no net gain in dwellings. Importantly, the new dwelling will be closer to the village and therefore arguably more sustainable than the flat being given up. There are no technical objections to the proposal, and no objections from neighbours or the parish council. In summary, this is a modest and carefully designed proposal that enables my client to downsize or continue to live in the same area. It would not increase dwelling numbers and would have no greater visual impact than the development already approved. We very much hope that you will support the application and grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right, I have no other speakers, and so the first one this afternoon is Councillor Dent. Sorry.
Yeah, I think this is just a no-brainer. There's absolutely no reason why these people shouldn't be able to build this property. It's not going to do any harm to anyone. I propose that we vote against officer recommendation and agree to allow these people to build their property and don't waste any more of today, to be honest.
Right, Councillor.
That is a proposal.
If it's a proposal, could I please have a reason for it?
There's no
reason.
A planning reason for it, that there is absolutely no loss to local amenity. And so there's no one against it. You have, it says here, nobody locally is against it at all. There's no objection from the parish council, no objection in terms of environment. No objection from Somerset Highways. The development would not do any harm to anyone. So I just think we should give them permission.
So you're saying that the respondees have made no complaints? Thank you. Do you wish to make any comment?
Yeah, again, just to say, you members, you'll see from the reason for refusal in the report pack that you're right in what you've said, but the key issue here is that your development plan policy would not support the development of a dwelling in this location because it's a dwelling in the open countryside.
Okay.
And what you've got to do is recognise that this will be a departure from the development plan, but you don't conclude that there are any harms that would outweigh the balance of delivering one additional dwelling.
We're always being told we're in a tilted balance and we need to produce more houses. So there we go. There's one more house without any harm to anyone.
Thank you. We've got 2 or 3 people who want to speak before we go any further. Dawn Denton, and then I will ask a question.
Thank you. So there's reference in the pack about the end user would have no access to sustainable transport, but they don't need sustainable transport because it's the family staying together. Also, it says on page 54 that there would be no greater visual impact on the character or appearance of the area than the previously approved garage and workshop. So for that reason, I think that's enough to approve this application. I think it says that the proposal will bring few ongoing economic or public benefits, and I disagree because when you keep the family together, then you are helping in the long run the public purse, really. And also, again, the reliance on private cars, well, they already do because they live in a rural environment, and it's just adding to the cluster of houses that are already there. And it's on a concrete slab that's already there. So, yeah, I would second any proposal.
Okay, we have a proposal. I'm going to let some other points being made. First one, was it Councillor Clark? And then Councillor Hahn.
Thank you, Chair. This chap is building on a piece of concrete that looks pretty hideous. So let's get it covered up with something decent that it can be used for the benefit of the family. I mean, as Dawn Denton said, this keeps the family together. It stops social care costs coming back to the county sooner or later. It's all indefinable. We can't see it, but it is there and it saves the county money in the long run. So I think it's to be appreciated from that point of view. And when I can't remember who, I think it was Carlton, said it's building in the open countryside. I'd probably look at a different map to me. I can see it's fitted in between other houses. It's just a ribbon development that's carried on down the road. So I'm with the proposal in the second. Let's get on with it.
Councillor Ham.
Thank you, Chair.
Happy. I have a question. Could we see the floor plan, please? Come up. Right, that one there. The 2 squares on the upper one, do I read them as roof lights?
Those will be roof lights.
The roof lights. This is in, albeit with other houses around it, but it all contributes to the lessening of the dark skies. I'm not sure that, I would have thought at least that we should have an undertaking that they're automatically blinded when the light comes on, or they have the special glass which doesn't emit light. I mean, we do have, it is open countryside, and if we are minded to support this, then let's make sure it is as ecologically friendly as possible. Can we request that, please? And also, am I correct in thinking that this is a house for the future? It's not for one generation to meet a certain family's requirements. This is an ongoing dwelling. We're not putting any ties to it at all. It's straight open planning application.
I mean,
So the relevance of having other family members is not a planning reason, is it?
Chairman, just obviously the officer recommendation was for refusal, so we didn't include any conditions. But effectively, what's proposed here is a self-contained dwelling with a self-contained access. Whilst yes, it's on land that was previously part of a larger curtilage, it's not specifically being proposed on that basis. That the one thing the applicant, as you've heard from the applicant's agent, they are suggesting is that within the house there is a self-contained unit which provides 2 rooms, one on the upper level, one on the lower level, very open plan, single bed, bathroom squashed in, open plan kitchen squashed in. They're as you've heard, they are proposing to submit a unilateral undertaking which would extinguish the lawful use of that part of the host house, so it would go back in to just part of the main house. Well, I would suggest that there's little planning benefit in making your decision subject to that, because there'd be nothing stopping them from submitting a subsequent application for another part of the house to be self-contained, because there's support in the NPPF to allow that to happen. My suggestion would be that if you haven't identified any harm, and that's what you're effectively saying from the comments that you've made, is that you approve the application on the tilted balance as a departure from the development plan. So what we would do is that we would advertise it as a departure if that's your recommendation today, and if there aren't any new additional comments submitted in response to that advert, we would then issue a decision. If you want to delegate authority to us to devise some conditions to cover specific topic areas, you can also include that as your recommendation, and we'll do that in the time from today and when the departure date finishes, which will be 21 days from today.
Okay, thank you for that advice. That's helpful. Councillor Clark. Oh, my apologies. Susanna Hart.
Obviously, we've got the tilted balance, but is non-maleficence not a thing in planning as well? Which is do no harm. It's doing no harm. It'd be just nice, not necessarily right now, but to find out whether or not that
it's not a planning policy, no.
Not in planning. Okay. Also, I mean, in terms of the night sky, obviously there's a variety of things, as we've discussed ad infinitum in this room, that you can do. But no one seemed to be worried about the light that was going to be caused by 40 houses in Evercreech, which would be a lot more light than this. Plus, if this is a garage with a light that comes on every time your car drives up, and then they malfunction and they stay on all night long, that would be more light than a house.
Could I just point out that the planning application we're looking at Evercreech outline only. This is not outline only. There is 2 different types of planning applications, and therefore the lighting is relevant to this, but not to Evercreech.
Because we would have had to consider it later.
It will be part of
it. So it would still create light.
Right, Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one that the planning officer said we could attach conditions to this to make them do certain things. Is this pre the change in attitude from Somerset Planning that they are going to do away with conditions and preconditions, so you can put conditions on this one, which you probably wouldn't do under the new regime?
If I can, Chair. I mean, effectively, in terms of the conditions that we would have recommended if we were recommending approval, we would have put a condition on requiring it to be occupied as a self-build, because the applicants said that they're going to complete it as a self-build, which has an implication in terms of the biodiversity net gain that they have to provide. So we would put a condition on requiring that. We wouldn't put a condition on requiring it to be ancillary to the host house, because that's not what they are proposing. We might have put a condition on regards to the access arrangements to make sure that the visibility displays are adequate and sufficient so that vehicles can leave and enter the site safely. We might have put a condition on about the materials. Councillor Wykes talked about the manner in which the roof lights are provided and whether or not you'd seek an automatic closing mechanism, which we can do by asking the applicant to notify on the plans. If you felt strongly about the green roof being a really positive feature of the application scheme in sustainability terms, we might have put a condition on regarding further details as to how they were going to deliver the green roof.
Okay, your question answered. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. It was just a point of clarification for the current period that the planning authority is going through. All of the conditions we impose have to meet the 6 tests that are set out in the NPPF, so they have to be sort of reasonable, proportionate, relevant to the application that's in. So if members were recommending a condition that we didn't think complied with those, my role would be to advise you that it wouldn't comply with those and therefore we wouldn't be imposing it. Simon's obviously covered off the ones that we think we would be imposing. That would be shared with the chair and vice chair for sign off to make sure they were satisfied with it in the event that the application is recommended for approval. As part of the period, we are trying to reduce pre-commencement conditions and pre-occupation conditions specifically. With pre-commencement conditions, we need approval from the applicant or agent before we impose them anyway. That's set out in the legislation. So in the event we were trying to impose a pre-commencement condition, if the applicant or agent wasn't satisfied that it was reasonable, necessary or appropriate for it to be triggered at that point, if they weren't agreeing to it, then we would come to a bit of a stalemate with the application. So we are minimising conditions in terms of they have to be reasonably necessary for the development. But if there are particular elements that members want to see come forward on this scheme, by all means, mention it now and we can make sure if we're happy it complies with the test, we can impose it.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Robbins?
Yeah, no. If no one seconded it, Councillor Hart's proposal already, I'd like to do so.
Thank you. We have a seconder and such, and I have no other hands here. So shall we go back and take the proposal? Sorry. With clarity.
For the interest in complete clarity, can I just confirm effectively members are voting to overturn the officer's recommendation effectively for the opposite, for the reason for refusal that's set out in the report, in that it is a new development in the countryside and so therefore is contrary to the local plan in terms of where we encourage development to go, but members are satisfied that based on the lack of material harm to the surrounding area, the lack of any statutory objections in terms of the material aspects that were considered, that the tilted balance weighs in favour of this development and therefore they're supporting the development despite the conflict with the local plan.
Thank you. Councillor Denton, you were seconding it, and do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, why would it be a new development if it's already a concrete slab and it was a garage or something before?
Because in the local plan, there are policies that support extensions, alterations or betterments to existing properties. If you are introducing a new self-contained development, as a result of that, you're introducing a new residence and therefore new vehicular traffic in connection with that. I know it is a relocation of someone who already lives locally. What that means is that whilst this building might not result in new traffic because they're moving across, the reoccupation of their house will. So because there is a net increase in dwellings, it's a new development in terms of residential use, if that makes sense.
Okay. Right. Can I just proposal? We have the reasons voted by.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to make sure that part of the proposal is to delegate conditions to officers. I don't think that got mentioned in the summing up. That's
Yeah, so the recommendation effectively would be for officers to put together a suite of conditions as we would in the event we were recommending approval for this development. That would be shared and signed off with the chair and vice chair as is standard practice. I'm assuming from the debate that I've heard, members are not interested in a legal agreement to tie the occupation of this unit to any other adjoining unit. They're just happy for it to be a separate unit.
I just think we need to do whatever is going to be quickest and easiest, given the dreadful conditions that the planning department find themselves currently under, and also to just expedite the process in terms of the lady that wishes to move out of a property that no longer is suitable for her needs. So whatever's going to be quickest and easiest for the planning department and the lady in question, please.
Right. Okay, we can go to a vote now. All those for the proposal to go against officer recommendations, could you show your hands, please? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? Thank you very much indeed for that. Congratulations for your new build. Okay, on to item 7. We now have the land at Knoll. We have a number of speakers, and I'm also aware that we have Councillor Shearer who may be available. She's unfortunately has a clash because of the changing the date. Just one moment. Right, good afternoon again. We'll go to the officer presentation on agenda item 7, the land at Knoll Lane, Wookey.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an outline planning application for up to 9 dwellings with all matters reserved and to be, which would be determined under a subsequent application. The application is recommended for approval with conditions. Here is the location plan showing the existing agricultural access off of Knoll Lane in the northeast corner. And X marks the indicative access off of Monksford Lane at the south boundary of the site. Here's an aerial view of Wookey showing some of the basic facilities, some of which are what make Wookey a secondary village. So you can see the site in green, 2 recreation spaces in blue, one's like a rec football pitch, etc. The other, or used for that purpose. And then there's a children's play park, 2 pubs, church, the Wookey Farm Shop and Wookey School, which is accessed along the road there. This shows the development boundary for Wookey with the site in green. Zoomed in, here you can see the site. And just referring back to the red line and the blue line of the field, which is under the same ownership. Here's an indicative site plan, which demonstrates that up to 9 dwellings can be accommodated within the red line. I'll just pause a second. Okay. So in terms of updating for the application, during the course of the application, phosphate mitigation was resolved, providing foul drainage is connected to the main sewer. That's an update in guidance that we've been provided with. And highways no longer require specific offset between the proposed access at Monksford Lane and the Hales Close existing junction. Since the report was written, we've received 2 additional letters from members of the public, summarised here, raising traffic or highways comments in relation to the Ford's parking, narrow lanes, traffic pressures, etc. Concerns have also been raised with regard to the changes in the application. The application information hasn't substantially changed. It's just been provided in different formats. So this shows the original design and access statement, which indicated the proposed access off of Monksford Lane as the existing site plan does, with the X marking it. And also concerns have been raised regarding the amount of 9 dwellings and how this bypasses the requirement for affordable housing. An application for housing development within the blue line subsequently will be considered against the Brandlord test case law, which establishes that where a site is considered to be a continuation of a previously approved housing site, the cumulative total of housing is assessed for an affordable housing requirement. So here are the proposed conditions. These are the standard ones at Outline Planning Commission. No obligations are being sought at this stage. And here are the development and site-specific conditions concerned with reducing or mitigating any impacts and securing appropriate details or at reserved matter stage. Further conditions can be applied at the reserved matter stage. To conclude, the development is for up to 9 dwellings, is recommended for approval with conditions due to the site's proximity to the settlement boundary, paragraph 11D, and no significant and demonstrable harm being identified. Final details may mean that 9 dwellings cannot be adequately accommodated as described in the officer report. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. We have a number of speakers. The first one is Alison Maher, who is a local resident.
Hello committee, I'm Alison Maher and I live adjacent to the proposed development. I'd urge the councillors on this committee to consider this application very carefully. We've heard that it's only 9 houses, but I'm concerned there'll almost certainly be more applications once the precedent is set. There's ample space in the field for more development, and a previous application was for 21 houses. The plan states it is natural infill. No, it's going outside the village boundary and going straight into open countryside to the west. Wookey already has a disproportionate amount of social housing, and there's been no contribution to ameliorate the impact of this. The strength of feeling about this proposed development is very high within the village, as evidenced by 39 objections. It is not just the residents of Knoll Lane who are most affected, but the wider village are also very concerned. The revised plan, which changes the entrance from Knoll Lane, which was way too narrow, to Monksford Lane, doesn't address the main issue here, which is that Knoll Lane is already at saturation point in terms of traffic, and it's the only lane in the village which is used for recreation by residents and visitors, walkers, joggers, cyclists, horse riders, mums with pushchairs, etc. It's a very busy road. Knoll Lane and the tracks and roads leading into it, including Monksford Lane, are all dead ends for normal road traffic, making Knoll Lane effectively a cul-de-sac. The only entrance to or exit from these roads is at the junction of Knoll Lane and Praywater Road. The first 100 metres or so of Knoll Lane from this junction effectively becomes a single track road due to parked cars. Added to this, 30 cars or so may be trying to enter or exit the sports ground, whose entrance, a very narrow entrance in Dummies Lane, is also very near the junction and has almost no splay. The following vehicular access is required: large agricultural vehicles to fields and farms, caravans, many caravans to the campsite at the end of Monksford Lane, domestic traffic to more than 60 homes, stables and sports ground. Another housing development will only add to the traffic using this single track, no through road and the dangerous Knoll Lane, Praywater Road junction. This objection is not NIMBYism, it is attempting to protect and preserve the quality of life for Wookey residents who are already living with the impact of high levels of traffic pollution on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We then move on to a representative of the Parish Council, Councillor Boskill.
Thank you. I've actually changed my mind since the previous application. Similar to the smell of the pigs that weren't there, the traffic people may have looked at Knoll Lane and said, "Oh, that bit might be dual passing," but 99% of the time, the entrance to Knoll Lane from Praywater Road is single track, and if you get a delivery halfway along it, which is often do, it all blocks up. It's terrible. It's a single track, no through road, 60 houses. Campsite, farms, the lot. It's a lot of traffic. Moving on to 9 houses, in the current plan period, there's been more than 6 developments during the plan period of less than 10 houses, making a total of 56 new houses. But surprise, surprise, none affordable. Wookey has a greater need of affordable houses than most villages in the region. There was also no benefit to our community in terms of infrastructure provision or funding, as community infrastructure levy, as you know, has never been adopted. If we were down the road in the old Sedgemoor district, it would have been £72,000 for 9 houses. One of the worthwhile infrastructure projects could be the active travel route. That's a former railway, the Strawberry Line. This passes only a short distance from this site, and when fully completed, would be extremely beneficial to the village of Wookey. Hard-working volunteers are making this project a reality. Enthusiastic fundraising is essential, of course, but there's no infrastructure levy money available. Tough. Therefore, if you are mindful to approve this application, Wookey Parish Council and its residents would ask that it is from an agreement of a developer contribution towards the active travel route, that is the former Strawberry Line. We'd request that's a sizable amount, as reflect that this planning application is essentially contribution and tax-free at present. Such financial contribution would make a significant impact on the volunteers' ability to deliver the active travel route, would go a tiny way towards the benefits of the application, outweighing the harm done to the community and poor old Knoll Lane. End of.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, we move now on to the divisional member, Councillor Shearer.
Thank you very much, and apologies for having to step out of the room and step back in again. I'm just going to follow on with some similar comments, I think, to some of my colleagues and residents from the area. So thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. The application is of considerable concern, which is reflected in over 25 public comments, and that's not just the immediate neighbours, but also the wider community who are concerned. It should be noted that the site has been subject to 4 refusals in the last 10 years, is outside of the development boundary and does not meet the existing spatial strategy. I'd like to highlight a number of points for the committee to consider. With regard to highways, it's been mentioned, as both Knoll Lane and Monksford Lane are essentially, realistically, dead-end lanes, all traffic to and from the site will empty onto the 5-way junction adjacent to the pub. This is already a junction of considerable safety concern. While the officer's report, section 23.3, recognises the highway network pressures and lists some of the limitations, for example, being single track in places, the report makes no mention of the lack of footpaths, nor that the front doors of a number of houses open directly onto Knoll Lane. The report does say it is acknowledged that the surrounding highways network presents a number of constraints which may influence perceptions of highway safety and accessibility. It also says that the development is likely to generate between 54 to 72 vehicular movements per day, which is not likely to result in a severe highway safety impact. However, this will have a very real impact on the residents in the village and comes as a cumulative point to all the previous developments. With regard to foul water, the site is going to be connected to the main drainage, but there's no mention of storm discharges from the Wookey water treatment works or any scheduled upgrade to that plant. Another thing to consider. Cumulative impact of housing applications. While 9 houses can be argued as minor, it is the cumulative impact on the community that's missing from the officer's reports and the highways comments. There have been 6 tranches. Forgive me for repeating. There have been 6 tranches of 9 houses in addition to other developments. These are materially changing the ability to walk safely around the village. It has medieval lanes. We hear that phrase a lot, but it has medieval lanes with pinch points and blind corners, and very narrow. And additionally, again, mentioned already, there is no Section 106 agreement because of the minor nature of the development. It makes it very clear, but how can there be no mitigation of the impact of this development given still is not acceptable? So my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Shearer. I will then move now on to committee members who would like to speak first. So do the officers want to respond first to any of the comments made? Do you wish to respond to any of the comments made? No? Okay. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Just a quick question. There's been a lot made of the highways and lack of space. One of the comments made, first of all, was that these lanes can't be passed through because of the ford. Could you point out the ford, please? And it was up on the screen.
You got to the widest.
Can you?
They're not on the map.
No.
Which direction they're in?
They're on the western side of the community. And they're at the end of Knoll Lane and Monksford Lane. And the point being is that because there's a ford, it is difficult to actually pass at certain times of the year. So in essence, it's posting all the traffic going east to where that triangle is, where the pub is. And that's the 5-way junction because you've got 4 roads plus the access to the playing field there.
Thank you.
Any other queries or questions at this? I know this is the 3rd one of the day. Councillor Lovell.
Given that the officers haven't come back about some of the questions that have been raised, I'm going to have to challenge them further. What is their reaction to this whole issue about the cumulative effect of developments, meaning that there is no 106 or no SIL? We don't have SIL
Community
here.
infrastructure levy.
Well, we're not getting anything out of it, frankly, because of the cumulative elements of all these developments. We've already approved one this year so far in the village. I'd like a reaction, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Lovell. Yes, I can appreciate it's frustrating, but to flip the question around, how would you frame that as a reason for refusal for this application? The cumulative impact is a system of the wider planning system, and that's not necessarily something that this application has to address. It is the case that we've had, lots of applications in Wookey below 10, and it's a matter of policy that we generally don't seek contributions on those applications. There's nothing in policy to say you can't submit an application for 9 dwellings. That's the case across the country. The potential way to address it is by having a plan-led system. At the moment, we have a plan which is unfortunately somewhat out of date. If we had a plan which had sufficient housing allocations to meet the housing requirements that we're now charged with fulfilling, we would be able to resist applications such as this one, which is outside the settlement limits. Currently, we don't really have that scope. So it's something that is addressable in the future, but it's not a reason for refusal, in my view, for this current application.
Sorry, I missed that. Barry Clark, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Throughout the officer's report, there are references to up to 9 dwellings. And I think there is actually a point made in there somewhere that it won't sustain 9 dwellings comfortably. It looks as though they've all been pushed and poked in. And I go back to my old point about scratty little gardens. The gardens are smaller than the footprints of the houses. Now, this is an opportunity. If people really feel strongly about doing a good development, they go back to them and say, we're talking about up to 9. Let's do 5. Let's do 6. Let's make it look really good. Not squeeze 9 in. That's just predatory builders on the prowl. I hate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I pick up one point of yours, if I may? The planning application which was approved in Henley Lane, that is the lane to the right of that drawing at the top, by this committee, I don't know, 3 months ago, did actually have a request that there should be a contribution agreed by, I think, officers and the chair to the Strawberry Line, recognising that this is a community which is within reasonable cycling distance of the City of Wells, and the Strawberry Line will provide safe access. The secondary school is in Wells, the doctor's surgery is in Wells, all bar one shop, and it's a very small shop, is in Wells. And therefore, if you're going to make this development sustainable, you do need to have a recognition. And I think the point being made by, I think, the parish council was that if this was a few miles to the west in Sedgemoor, it would have attracted over 70,000 in SIL contributions. And I think that that's not unreasonable to think about mitigating the impact to the community of this development, because if it is 70 houses and with 70 car movements plus, then anything we can take, or any pressure we can take of that triangular junction of 5 roads is really quite critical. Just for people who don't know it, there is an extremely popular pub called the Ring of Bells on that corner, and we get a lot of people outside the community coming and parking, interestingly, around there. I'll put it like that. So, question I have is, can we not have a contribution to the community to mitigate the impact of moving everyone by car?
Thank you, Vice Chair, or Chair, pardon. In terms of Strawberry Line contributions, we do have a background document which we use to seek contributions to the Strawberry Line. That is on the basis that it applies to major developments only. And that's because we generally seek, that's generally the type of development that we seek contributions towards, be that education, be that affordable housing. So that's why that document has major development as the threshold. It's obviously important that we are fair when we seek contributions towards various pieces of infrastructure. So given that this site is below the threshold there, we haven't sought it in this instance. I'm not sure of the exact specifics of the Henley Lane application in terms of why we were able to secure it for that one. But in terms of this current application, because it's a non-major, we wouldn't seek contributions to the Strawberry Line.
The Henley Lane one I'm referring to, and I'm sorry, I thought you were the case officer on it. My apologies if you weren't. It was the second tranche of 9 houses on that lane, and this committee argued that there should be a contribution. Councillor Dan, sorry.
I think for that particular case, if I am remembering the right site, it was the second tranche of 9 houses by the same developer for the land parcel to the back.
Yeah.
So the justification was put forward that given the piecemeal development of that particular site, the second application of 9 dwellings, it might be reasonable to then impose the request. You know, there have been some sites in the east and south areas where sites are artificially subdivided, let's say, so that they end up becoming smaller to suit the purpose. In terms of this site, you know, the application is the red outline for the whole of the site. The application is shows a layout of 9 dwellings, which comes under major development as sort of specified by policy. At the moment, there's nothing to suggest there's another land parcel coming forward by the same person in the same area that would give the same weight as was the case in that particular circumstance.
I think my understanding, if you look at the past planning history of the site, there was an application for 21 houses, and I think which included the land to the west of that site, and one where you can see the little light coloured corner of it. I recognise that policy, this is a planning loophole, obviously, and one which we have, you can see it's in the same ownership.
I was going to say, in terms of in the event that the Blue Land subsequently comes forward, then that is something that we will be looking at as officers, and members will be free to look at in terms of cumulative development from that particular developer. If that development is under 9, we'll still have technically it's under 9, but if it does attach to a site that's previously been developed for 9, the question for members this time is based on that red outline and that layout. You know, I have seen an application refused on sort of piecemeal small scale development where members were of the view that the layout was so I'm going to say disproportionately spacious. So you spread out 9 dwellings over such a wide area that actually it's inefficient use of land. You could use the land more efficiently and develop more houses in that space. So the question, I think for officers, but also for members, was if you develop 9 on that space, is that a comfortable use of land, or is that significant underdevelopment for that road? Given the concerns that are being expressed in terms of the highway network, I think officers came to the balance that actually 9 was probably relatively comfortable for that site. But again, this is for members to consider. In terms of refusal or looking at contributions, you'd be looking at whether it's such an inefficient use of land that actually you think it should have been a major, and therefore you should have had those contributions. But unfortunately, the triggers for major development are set nationally.
Planning loophole. Could I ask for the drawing of the junction by the pub, the one where Knoll Lane meets the upper 4 roads? Have you got a closer one? Could you share with us Highway's view on this junction and the pressure it's under? Was there any, I couldn't see anything in your report about it. It's not the one where the site is, it's the next one in on Knoll Lane. Yeah.
I think in answer to your question, Chair, we do we have a reason for refusal? And the officer opinion is we don't have a highways objection. We don't have anything saying there would be a severe impact on the highway network. And I think that comes largely from the quantum. You know, we're only talking about 9 dwellings on this site. We've obviously got an existing development opposite. So, you know, we accept there would be pressure, additional pressure, and that's been recognised in the officer report in terms of the trip generation. But do we spill over that threshold of severe? We don't think we would.
Could I just for clarity, and I think it's quite important, I appreciate the highways have made that comment. We're aware now of another application in Monksfield Lane for two fishing lakes and chalet buildings has just come out. And while obviously there's no determination on that, the question is what is the threshold for severe in terms of the impact on housing, on the highways?
That is probably one for my colleague to my left. I mean, it will be a case by case basis, I think. Highways officers will look at the specific situation of a site, the road network. In terms of the fishing lake that you mentioned, lakes, that would be looked at if this site were approved. The cumulative impact of this plus the fishing lakes would need to be looked at, but
I mean, you've basically covered it. It would be a case by case basis in terms of the overall impact of a development on the wider highway network. On something of this scale and size, it's deemed acceptable. Obviously, when you start getting more and more of these sites, the cumulative impact then gets looked at. So it would be considered if a specific junction, which could potentially have issues, is going to be overloaded or a roundabout or anything like that, then we would look at that. But for something of this size at present, it wasn't deemed as an issue.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Any other questions? I see a lot of people watching the clock and feeling you want to go home, and I understand. Go on.
Well, can I make a proposal, Chair, to kind of move things along a bit? Well, we're told that there's very little reason to turn it down. So what I'm suggesting is that we accept the proposal, but because of the severe highway concerns, that despite officer advice, we do ask for some contribution for the active travel route, even though it is undersized, because I think the highways is the problem here. To get as many cars as possible off the road, active travel surely has to be the way to go. So I think we have to follow that up as well. So that would be my proposal, Chair, to delegate that to the chair of this committee and the officers.
Okay, do I take that as a proposal? Okay, and the reason for it is to support the use of active travel to take pressure off the highways. Okay, do I have a seconder? Sorry.
it was just to clarify, we would need to secure that through a Section 106 agreement, which we would need to negotiate with the developer, and we could do that on the basis of the document I referred to. So obviously, members would need to, if the proposal were approved, it would be subject to that 106 agreement to be delegated to officers to negotiate with the applicant.
Okay. You content with that? So we have a proposal to accept the approval. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Is that a very satisfactory arrangement that we'd say, perhaps, yes, we'll approve it, and then it can go to the officers to negotiate a 106. And sometimes these 106 negotiations don't go too well. And the developer then says, well, I'm not paying anything. You've given me permission, but I'm not paying anything. Where do we go then?
I'll come back on that if you don't mind. So in terms of the resolution, from what I've heard from the proposal from Councillor Reid, effectively the resolution is to grant planning permission in accordance with the conditions subject to a financial contribution towards sustainable travel or active travel routes. And in that case, the end amount, the figure, would be agreed in discussion with the applicant and the chair and vice chair. What would then happen is we need to secure that figure through the legal agreement, because it has to be secured through legal agreement. In the event we can't agree a figure and we can't secure any improvement, it would be back to committee, and we would say, we've asked the question, the applicant said no, it's back to you. Do you think it's bad enough to refuse it without that? So if the resolution is to grant consent subject to the contribution, we can take that offline and see what we can negotiate. If the negotiations do go sour, it would be back to committee, because technically it's against committee resolution if there isn't a contribution. So it would be back to you guys again in the event that there's no contribution agreed.
Thank you for that clarity. And we still have a proposal from you, Rob?
Yes, yeah.
Would anyone like to second it? Thank you. Councillor Dimmery. We are clear then, we're going with the officer recommendation for approval subject to a 106 agreement providing a contribution to active travel. Could I have a show of hands, please? Those against? Okay, then the to go with the officer recommendation has been refused. Do I have a? Oh, my apologies, and there's an exception there. So we have a number of people who have now objected to the officer recommendation, and as such, the planning application has failed.
I'm sorry, in terms of process, so the vote to approve as recommended by the officer has failed with the 106. So there needs to be a counter recommendation from someone that needs to be seconded, setting out the cause for concern or objection against the application. Ideally, you'd be looking at one of the 5 that voted against the recommendation to set out what the objections are and what the material reasons are.
Councillor proposal, please. Councillor Ham.
I think the feeling in the room is there are so many little things, whether there's a huge big thing. But I think the biggest thing is that Wookey has had so many small developments, and we keep coming back saying, oh, another one won't make any difference. Another 5 or another 9 or another 8 houses won't make any difference. And I doubt if the one we passed in Henley Lane has been built out yet. So it's an accumulation thing onto the traffic, onto the roads. And I can see where highways have come from. They've decided that this 8 or 9 new houses won't make any difference. But they probably said that on all the others. And if you add, I think somebody said 58, 59
56.
That is a cumulative effect on narrow roads in a village that all come to one point by a pub. It's just madness. But whether you can pick the right words out of that. I've just tried to attempt to put something together.
So my position is to try to get you guys to the position where you're in the most defendable point for making a decision.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on what you've said, you've got concerns about the cumulative impact in terms of the number of small scale developments that have occurred within the vicinity.
Yeah.
And the question was raised about highway capacity. From that, my question would be, do we have the information from highways that they have considered all of those little developments to come to the conclusion they've come to? Because if the answer is yes, then you'd be going against the council's view in terms of cumulative impact. I don't know whether they have or whether they haven't, so I'm looking down that way. So my view in terms of what would be most defendable for everyone at the moment was that in the event there are concerns about cumulative development and the highway impact, a deferral to confirm whether all of the cumulative sites have been considered in terms of traffic generation and what that means for those junctions that are raising concern would be the safest position for you guys to get to. But it is down to you as committee members to determine where you want to go with stuff. So it is down to you guys, but to try and get you to the safest position, I think probably deferral for more information to confirm what the case is in terms of cumulative impact for highways.
Right, I will take the lead from our advice and say that we would like to defer this application until the resolution of the capacity of the village roads and the junctions are reviewed. Are people happy to support a deferred?
Can I add to that? There was 2 roads that end up in Fords, which, you know, that's obviously a real problem at a wet time. I was going to say something else and I've lost it now. The fact that this accumulation and we're totally reliant on highways who tend to look at just a bit of road. If there's no accidents, then it doesn't matter. Well, we're getting to the point where, you know, somebody's going to die because we've made the wrong decision. And I feel really, really strongly about that.
Okay, Councillor Denton.
I just want to ask, if it is deferred and it comes back to committee, is it just the one issue that we then debate, or does the whole application get debated? Because there's been times when we've done both. Sometimes we've done the whole application, sometimes we've been told just one. So what would be the process if it came back?
Okay, response from Dawn and then Councillor Ham.
I just remembered what I was going to say. You mentioned planning for fishing lakes. If we put this one on hold, could the fishing lakes then overtake this one? And then we'd have another situation.
I was going to say, not unlike a cheese counter, applications are a little bit take a ticket and wait your turn. Obviously, this one was being determined now. If it's being, or was looking to be determined now, if it was determined ahead of the fishing lakes, any traffic generation from this site would have to be taken into consideration for the next application. In deferring the application, a decision hasn't been made. Consideration needs to be given to approved or live applications in terms of traffic generation. So the fact that fishing lakes are in is something that could be looked at, but in terms of how much weight you give it, you only fully weight it once it's consented. So again, it would be a race to the finish line for the 2 sites, I'd assume, in terms of looking at it. In terms of the point Councillor Denton raised in terms of what can be considered the next time round, it is best practice to be very clear when you defer an application as to what you are discussing when it comes back. The risk is if you are very specific about what you're discussing and it comes back and you introduce an absolutely new reason for refusal and it goes down on that basis, and there could have been the opportunity to work proactively with the applicant, which is what we're encouraged to do through national policy, we could be at risk of costs for being seen to be unreasonable. So if there is anything that you want to consider as part of the deferral, like a contribution, like additional information in terms of cumulative development, I would strongly recommend you consider all of that now. So at the conclusion of today, we're very clear in terms of what it's being deferred on and what the focus of discussion next time would be. That said, the decision's not made until the decision's made. So at the point of making the decision, you can make a slightly different one, but you are more and more unreasonable the more things that get introduced. So it's best practice to be black and white now in terms of what it's being deferred for, what you'd be looking to come back to, and then when it comes back, focusing the discussion on those reasons.
Thank you for that advice. I'm quite happy to amend the proposal to include the 106 discussions related to active travel as part of the need for deferral. Tony.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused, which is easy to do with me. Could you explain? I thought we'd had a proposal and a seconder that was voted on to decline this permission.
Yeah.
Are we now saying, no, we didn't do that, or we could set that to one side and have another vote for something more palatable?
Because the proposal failed, we now need to have another one. Sorry.
So the proposal that was proposed and seconded was to approve the application with a 106 contribution. So that failed. So that means we cannot approve the application with the 106 contribution. That option is off the table. So that leaves you with two other options at least, which is refuse the application. But if you do that, someone needs to propose it, someone needs to set out the planning reasons for doing so, and that needs to be seconded, and then it needs to be voted on. I think there were some suggestions put forward by Councillor Ham. I don't think they've been formed into a proposal. You have proposed, okay? Yep. Okay, so there is a general area that there is discomfort in terms of what that actual proposal is. I think hasn't been quite concreted down, and it hasn't been seconded yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other option is to defer, and that's also been proposed, but again, I think not seconded.
I think the proposal we had, which I made, was that we go for a deferment to resolve the information around the highway capacity and the junctions internally within the village. And the second one is to get the resolution of the 106. And those are the two reasons for deferral. And I think somebody, has anyone seconded it? Maybe not.
Sorry, just to confirm, there's been no seconder for Councillor Ham's proposal to refuse, and there's been no seconder for Councillor White's proposal to defer at this stage. Getting quick.
Councillor Hart.
Can we just kind of try and help Councillor Ham decide what his grounds for refusal potentially would be, as we've already bottomed out, I think, what Councillor White's deferral reasons would be? Can we try and understand what your potential reasons for refusal are? Councillor Ham, please.
Members, is it all right if I just, again, to try and help you, you've obviously seen the officer recommendation. The officer recommendation recommends approval. I'm not trying to suggest that that's something that you consider, because you made that crystal clear you don't want to. But you've seen that the officer has taken into account the location of the site, which is outside of your policy, your development plans, settlement boundary policy framework. So you know that it's contrary to CP1, CP2, CP4. The officer has assessed it. She has not been able to find any harm arising from the proposal. Obviously, the proposal is a greenfield on the edge of the settlement boundary. But ultimately, you've confirmed that you don't agree with her assessment. So if you don't agree with her assessment, I think possibly you'll focus at considering the cumulative impact of other developments that have been permitted in Wookey and other developments that might be permitted in Wookey. It's probably not the safest route to to form a reason why you don't think this application should be permitted. So effectively, you did it on the previous application when you voted to approve against the officer recommendation for refusal, and you also did it on the first one where you voted to refuse where the officer had recommended approval. So that's what you've got to do this time with this one, unless you're going to defer the application that is the motion that Councillor Wyke has put forward.
Thank you for that clarity. You've obviously clearer in thinking than anyone is at the moment. So we have two people, Councillor Dimmery and Councillor Reid.
I'm prepared to second your proposal on the basis I'm waiting for Councillor Hart, because she looks like she's coming up with a possible.
I abstained from
Okay,
the
fine.
original vote because
Okay,
I'm
then.
just a bit
No, in
confused
which
about
case,
what the best way forward is.
I'm just going to say, I instinctively don't like this. I don't like having to do this, but the very fact we're sitting around this table looking for reasons to turn it down, and we can't find anything really substantial with respect to Councillor Ham, who's come up with something that we're grasping at straws, and I just don't see how the best we can get for the village is to defer it and come back with some substantial reasons either to accept it or to turn it down.
Thank you. Any further comments? Well, we do have then a proposal on the table which is seconded.
But I just, with respect, I thought you'd made a proposal
Yeah,
and you're looking for a seconder.
that is just seconded.
I just seconded it.
Thank you. Right. No other hands up. I suggest that we go with the proposal in front of us then, which is proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Dimmery. That is, this is the third to look at the traffic impacts and junction safety. And in the, I'm just trying if there's anything else we want to say on traffic. Safety and impacts.
Yeah, and I think Councillor Ham, the cumulative impact of other developments in the village.
And the second item is that we would like resolution of the 106 discussion.
Just again to check, so the cumulative impact aspect is with regard to highway capacity and highway impact.
Yeah, and junctions.
Yes.
Okay.
But safety, to echo Heather's original comments, safety of these really narrow little, these are not lanes that we can suddenly change, even if we wish to. You know, this is England, as Melanie would say. Siamo in Inghilterra, siamo tutti inglesi.
Yeah. Okay. We have a proposal seconded. It's been explained. Are people prepared to vote now? Yeah. So the proposal is to defer. Those in favour? Seven. Those against? And those abstaining? 2. Okay.
I just say one thing, I know it's a bit late, but just in terms of what we were told before, best practice, is there anything else that we might want to discuss when this comes back? I know we should have, but you know, is that everything that we can think of?
I think it's too late, but I do think it is, those were the two key items raised at this. Okay, thank you for that. I think we just, I haven't even got an agenda in front of me now. I believe we have just one final item, which is the appeals report.
Yeah.
do you want to make any comment about this, Simon?
Yeah, I will just again looking at the list. The first two appeals reported, so 1 and 2. That was a case. I think it actually came to committee, and you agreed with the officer recommendation. No, it didn't go to committee. It was referred. It was to extend the chapel in Buckland Dinham. Very, very finely balanced case. We recommended approval on the basis that the alterations weren't acceptable. And in that case, the inspector disagreed with us. Again, just going through the report. I think the inspector didn't consider that the way in which the host house, which was previously the chapel, was going to be extended, would have had any harm on the significance of the setting of the listed building, although we did raise an issue about the brick type choice, which was a strange thing to conclude. But again, no cost on that one, Councillor Clark. You'll be glad to know, because I know you're always concerned about that. So that's good. In terms of the
Stone Gables, is that the next one?
So again, the next one was an application for a house, and as a council we didn't determine it, so the applicant appealed against non-determination, but the inspector resolved not to grant planning permission. And in terms of the reasons, again, impact on conservation area, impact on setting of listed buildings, and impact on the living conditions of neighbouring occupier. And
when someone puts in to have the conditions removed, do they have to give reasons, or can they just say, I want the conditions removed? Because I saw another one recently and it didn't seem that they'd given reasons to ask for the conditions to be removed. And I just wondered what the situation with that was.
So, Councillor, that's obviously separate to this application. Yeah. It helps if you set out why you think the conditions that are imposed should be removed, but there isn't a specific requirement, but it helps us when we're assessing it, understand the reasoning and see if there's any logic to it. But what I just wanted to share on that one again, to add to the mysteries of completing the planning balance, which we obviously have to do. On this case, the inspector recognised that we were short in terms of 5-year land supply delivery, but he found that the harms to the conservation area, harms to the setting of the listed building and neighbouring occupiers were sufficient to refuse permission. So again, in terms of completing the assessment, that's effectively, when we're in a planning balance scenario, it's effectively what we have to do. We have to consider if there are any harms, and if those harms are sufficient to override the tilted balance in favour of approval. So the next one is a variation of condition for the site in Boltonsborough, and the inspector dismissed the appeal on that one there. And just looking at that again, setting of the farmhouse and the listed building. Next one was also appeal against non-determination, where we didn't determine in time, but the inspector dismissed the appeal, again finding that there was harm, and again harm on the impact of the amenities of the general character and appearance, and concerned about loss of car parking, so that's the one in Houseman Road.
Street.
In street, yeah, that's that one. And then the last one, site in Anchor Road, where the inspector granted planning permission for the development of 75 houses on land which was outside of the settlement boundary. And again, I think the decision probably speaks for itself really on that one. I don't know if there are any questions on that one that you'd like to ask us.
Go on, Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Is it the case, Simon, that more listed buildings go to appeal than ordinary applications? Because I've seen 2 or 3 where the applicant gets really upset, usually because of the length of time it takes and the amount of non-contact that he gets with people to talk to sensibly about what he's trying to do. I'm thinking particularly the guy at Buckland Dinham, who I asked if it could come to committee and it didn't. For what it doesn't matter, it didn't happen. And he was very cross about the whole procedure up there.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, what we say in the office when we have applications for listed buildings is that, you know, really a listed building should come with a bit of a warning for future occupiers, because people buy a listed building not really knowing the implications of a listing, and they you know, they buy on the basis that they think they can knock down walls, include you know, high areas of glazing to replace solidly constructed walls, and unfortunately people acquire a listed building not really knowing the restrictions. They submit applications for us which are fairly poorly put together, and we have to determine them using the guidance that our conservation specialists provide. So it's not a case that a higher proportion of applications for listed building consent end up at appeal. You know, we've got a really strong group of conservation officers that work on lots of projects, and they deliver successful resolutions so that, you know, historic assets can be altered, and can be altered sympathetically. But we can't do that with all of them, and the ones that we can't do it with end up going to appeal.
I think if I can
question, sorry, go on.
Sorry, if I can just expand on that a little bit in terms of the number of appeals we've got, and we are doing a piece of work at the moment in terms of appeal performance, because in terms of government performance, we are looked at in terms of speed of delivery of planning applications, which is part of the reason we're doing this 3-month, you know, please leave us alone and we'll get through as many as we can. But we are also looked at the quality of the decisions that we make by government. So there are performance statistics that we are now recording, and we will be reporting back to committees in terms of how each of the areas is doing. And that isn't about committee versus members, because it isn't. It's just about how we as an authority are delivering, and whether we are delivering quality decisions. So quality decisions are measured by how many applications the planning inspectorate end up allowing that we ended up refusing. And if we're looking at appeals generally, the number of listed buildings appeals are relatively small. What we are getting quite a lot of at the moment is quite major housing appeals. We've got 3 public inquiries this month for this area. So, you know, we are seeing quite a lot of big developments going through. So the issue we've got with increasing appeals is obviously the appeals take the time of the same officers, that are the same people that are trying to get through the same decisions. And if we do get the applications allowed, we do run the risk of costs, which you've heard many times, you know, but we also spend that time and resource from a DM perspective, from a legal perspective, from a hosting it in the area perspective, putting up the defence for those cases. And if they are allowed, that shoots us in the foot in terms of performance going forward. So we are very carefully looking at what appeals we've got and what appeal decisions we're having. And we are going to be reporting back as we do at the moment at the end of committee, but we will be specifically looking at the majors as well, because the majors we've only got a small percentage which should be allowed by PINs before we get told off for performance. It's done on a rolling average over 2 years, but over 2 years, there's been quite a lot of majors that have been refused and have been subject to appeal recently, and particularly for the east area above the other areas. So it's just, the reason we report back on appeals is so that you can take into consideration the direction the inspectors are generally going and when they're striking the balance, how they're striking the balance, which is also one of my main reasons for sitting here and trying to get you to the most defended position possible. So if we are fighting appeals, we're fighting them in a way that could be defended.
Thank you, Dawn. Can I just, and I know this may not be the time for it, but the last appeal here is in Colford, where there were 75 houses. It came to the committee and we refused it. It was now the inspector allowed it. Is that my understanding?
I've just checked, it was delegated.
It was delegated. So it
Yeah,
didn't
well,
actually-
because the parish council didn't agree with didn't disagree with the officers. It was delegated. I've checked. I've checked in there.
Okay, so it didn't actually come to committee.
And it's not about committee. It's not about officers versus committee. We are all Somerset Council. It is Somerset Council's decisions, whether it is delegated or whether it is members. We are running the same training with officers that we run with you. Because ultimately, if we are translating it wrong on a delegated function, we are still getting bit by the same appeal decision. It doesn't matter whether it's committee or delegated. It's not an us v them. It's not a punishment for you guys. It's sharing the education for delegated officers and committee members. So we're all in the same space.
So if we are in the same space with this one, which was delegated, we do need to have some understanding. Or my apologies. Agree, we're all in the same space, and if this particular application was refused by officers, we need to understand what was happening. Sorry, Phil, you may have more knowledge of it, and then Tony.
I was just going to say, has it been reported? Because they are reported to committee. So every time we've got a load of decisions, they come on the back end of the committee. So I don't know, is it just it's missed the deadline for this one, or has it previously gone?
I can explain the background a bit to that one, if that would help, Chair. So this application at Colford outlined for up to 75 dwellings was refused under delegated authority in line with the recommendation of the parish council last year. That happened prior to the December 2024 MPPF update, where we also got some quite significant changes in our housing land supply requirements. So at the time the application was refused, it was refused for three main reasons, which related to the sustainability or unsustainability of the location and the trip generation that would result. With the new residents having to travel to, Radstock, Midsummer Norton, Frome, Shepton Mallet to get their daily needs or the bulk of them. It was also refused due to surface water issues. At the time the application was refused, the developer hadn't identified a specific outfall location, or the one they had identified was in third-party land control. And the third reason related to foul sewage. There was a concern at the time raised by Wessex Water that you'd get more spills basically due to untreated water. And in relation to the surface water reason for refusal, at the time of the decision, we also had an objection from the LFA on the basis of that outfall location being in third-party land. So then, as I mentioned, we had the 2024 update, and also after an appeal is submitted, applicants or appellants, as they then become, can submit further information, and on the back of that further information, both the LFA and Wessex Water withdrew their objections. So at that point, officers made the decision that on the basis of the updated housing needs and the new MPPF, the remaining reason for refusal that we had, which related to the site's location and its sustainability, were no longer, they were now outweighed by the provision of 75 housing. So it was a tilted balance situation. So we basically didn't defend our position at the appeal, and that's sort of the explanation for that one.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I know councillor Ham wants to say something, and I think you need to abstain. Yeah, go.
Can I just summarise that? I don't know if I'm being thick. So what you're saying is,
hang on, so let's let Philip Ham, because he was
right, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Ed for all of the work he put into that application. I was very disappointed he wasn't allowed to defend his original decisions. There's a lot of work still going on behind the scenes, even though planning has been given, especially with Wessex Water. We have a special meeting with them next week. They're going to explain how they're going to do this, and the Gladman site as well, because now the Gladman are now saying they're going to connect up differently. I need to talk to Ed about this outside the room, but all I can say is, you know, I'm thankful for all Ed's time, because he did a thorough professional job. And I think we may have been unlucky. We had the same inspector that also overturned the land opposite the White Post. And if you read the scripts, they're nearly identical and the same reasons. It doesn't really fit the bill, but we are where we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, if there's anything else to be said, sorry,
Sorry, so were you just saying basically the boundaries changed and then therefore we decided that we couldn't defend ourselves, or it was too risky, so it was cheaper just to let it happen and not defend?
It wasn't the boundary changed, it was the policy, national policy MPPF changed. Yeah, and then we thought that the balance had basically shifted. So at the time of refusal, we thought that harms significantly and demonstrably outweighed the benefits. And then when we lost those two drainage reasons, and we got a different MPPF, we thought it basically tipped in the other direction. It was always fairly finely balanced, I guess. But yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything further on the appeals, Simon? Or can we call the meeting to a close?
There was one other appeal reported beyond the ones that we just talked about, and it was where an applicant was seeking to remove a holiday occupancy restriction for a site that is in a open countryside location, and that appeal was dismissed. So effectively, the inspector agreed with us.
Good. Right. Thank you. I will look forward to perhaps a broader thing on lessons learnt. I think that would be helpful. I don't think any of us at 5:30 in the evening are that receptive. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, for your time this afternoon and your patience as I work my way through the system. We'll call the meeting to a close and wish Nick the best wishes for a speedy recovery. Okay, thank you very much indeed, everyone.